of Wuhan. Still, the Chinese report stayed away from direct attacks on President Trump. Here in the UK, Conor Burns, a key ally of Prime Minister Boris Johnson, has resigned as Trade Minister. This comes after an inquiry found he had breached parliamentary ethics rules to help his father. Following an investigation, the Commissioner for Standards ruled he did break rules designed to protect Parliament's reputation because of an attempt to intimidate a member of public. And finally, from today, Ireland is easing some of its coronavirus restrictions. People over the age of 70 will be allowed to leave their homes. Ireland's Prime Minister Leo Varadkar has set out a 5-stage plan to ease measures at 3-week intervals, starting with phase 1 on the 18th of May. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Now, BNP Paribas is warning of a profit slump this year as it sets aside $547 million for bad loans and took a $200 million hit at its trading unit. CFO Lars Machenil discussed the company's financial results, outlook and strategy with Bloomberg's Guy Johnson. Take a listen.
There were 3 exceptional elements impacting the results. The first one is, of course, the cost of risk. So the cost of risk stepped up by like 500 million. The second effect is a one-off effect related to accounting in our insurance, where we have portfolios, investment portfolios, which are going to the P&L, which are linked to what the markets do. They went down. So this is a negative effect, but which normally would taper back up when the market returns. And the third impact of the COVID-19 is when it comes to the decisions that have been taken by authorities to strongly recommend that dividends wouldn't be paid, which had an impact on our equity and derivatives activity. So those are the impacts that weighed a bit one-off on the results.
Do you think we're going to have to see further provisioning? We're getting into kind of macroeconomic territory here, but just kind of give me a sense of what you think the trajectory of the non-performing loan curve is going to look like.
If you look at it, the impact that we see now is basically the confinement that has been happening. That is basically what is weighing. And so the question is, how will we get out of this phase? So like, for example, in France, this will start as of next week. So a lot will depend on how this deconfinement will work. Yeah, this will be phased. It will be tapering up back towards normal by the end of the year. So it will all depend on how this one goes. And so it's just a tad too early to say what the impacts will be. So it will really depend on the speed at which this recovery happens, and if there is not a next phase or a next step in a crisis related to that or other. So it's just a tad too early to say.
But nevertheless, it looks like any reopening is going to be slow and gradual and is likely to have lasting effects. We're starting to see governments around Europe publishing the guidelines for corporations as they bring workers back into their facilities. Given that, it is likely that economies are going to be operating at below potential, and in particular smaller companies are going to find it harder to deal with those kinds of requirements. Do you expect, therefore, some of the SMEs to suffer more as we go through this, that actually loan loss provisioning against those SMEs will have to rise even further?
It depends a bit on sector. The way we look at it is we look at the counterparties as they were in February. Yeah, if they were good in February, we continue to see how they will phase into this period where the COVID is active. And so normally in the majority of European countries, there are guarantees from the state that should normally get them through that period. And then the question is, how will they sail through the period thereafter? Will they pick up back to normal? Will they pick up less? Will they pick up more? So that is the uncertainty that we'll have to see. But in our view, that pickup of the economy back to a normalization in the economy will be happening at the best by the end of the year, and therefore a return in GDP to normal will not be before 2022.
Madame Lagarde is making a lot of very cheap money available via the TLTRO system. What are your expectations about how that system is going to work?
Indeed, what you see is there are a lot of steps being taken by the supervisors to ensure that banks can play their role. Because back into the crisis of 2008, banks were a bit at the heart of the crisis, whereas now banks are at the heart of the solution. And that means that banks shouldn't be suffocated, so they should be able to transmit the money and basically be able to play their role. And that is what you see which is taking place. There are some changes in the requirements so that banks can play their role, and they're being taken so that banks can really pass on the money into the economy. So you see that all those steps are being taken for banks to play that supporting role to get out of this pandemic.
That was BNP Paribas CFO Lars Machenil, and BNP shares up 4.5% right now, 24 minutes into the equity market open. And Roger, we're going to have a discussion with the Pandora CEO next.
That's right. We're going to be finding out really about their funding as the jewellery makers' stores remain closed, of course, in the coronavirus outbreak. I mean, luxury goods, I guess, have been in focus, and a lot of this now just because of the problems, particularly in places which are often the biggest buyers of them.
Exactly, and the fact that Pandora's opened a new credit line, I mean, I find that interesting just because we've actually been asking a lot of the bank CEOs about that, what they've been seeing in terms of corporates drawing down their credit lines. But lots of themes to cover with Pandora. In the meantime, 25 minutes into the market open here in Europe, it is a risk-on day. The Stock 600 up 1.7%. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Victoria's Secret will go it alone. Parent L Brands has agreed to cancel a deal to sell a majority stake in the lingerie chain to the private equity firm Sycamore Partners. L Brands will move forward with its plans to operate Bath & Body Works as a public company, with Victoria's Secret being run separately. Microsoft is delaying the introduction of a foldable dual-screen Surface laptop that had been planned for the holiday season. The device was unveiled last October along with a dual-screen phone. There's no word on when the phone will be released. Apple is launching a new version of its MacBook Pro. The butterfly keyboard is gone, according to The Verge. No Apple products will use those keyboards anymore after it got all kinds of complaints about sticky and unresponsive keys. A four-session winning streak has oil back above $20 a barrel. Gains for ExxonMobil and Chevron helped the Dow eke out a narrow win as stocks began the week mostly higher. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Economics.
Are we still ultra-accommodative?
Finance.
Do you see this as a technical correction?
Investment.
The markets move seismically.
The Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast.
Mistakes are made when you sell something because you need to sell it.
Tom Keene, Jonathan Perrow, and the names that shape the world's markets.
We speak with Professor Schiller of Yale University.
David Solomon, the Goldman Sachs CEO, joins me.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Listen today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
The Boston Symphony Orchestra presents BSO at Home. While you stay inside, enjoy a curated collection of archived concerts and behind-the-scenes stories from BSO musicians. BSO Homeschool provides lessons for music lovers of all ages. New performances and messages from musicians are added regularly. Enjoy these selections and much more at bso.org/at-home.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative...
Switch on Acorn TV, the brand new streaming service featuring world-class TV from Britain and beyond. Watch exclusive premieres like the colourful crime drama Queens of Mystery.
Once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
And fan favourites like Inspector George Gently.
I'm just an old copper doing his job.
If you love drama with a little mystery thrown in, enjoy 30 days free with code ACORN30. Then just $4.99 a month. No adverts, no contract, cancel anytime. Join online today at acorn.tv.
Did you know that players of People's Postcode Lottery have raised over £500 million for charities and good causes? They've also won £63 million in prizes so far this year, and it could be your postcode next. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 21st of May to play in the June draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16+. Conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Somebody has a stroke every 5 minutes in the UK. With time, though, courage, and the right support, lives can be rebuilt. Mine was. But with this current crisis, I can't imagine how much harder it must be for the stroke survivor and their family, more isolated and alone than ever. The Stroke Association is working tirelessly to support the NHS and develop new ways to rebuild lives. To find out more or to donate, search Stroke Association now.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
The trampoline that makes Dad feel like a kid again. The projector that turns film night into outdoor cinema night. The hot tub that transforms your garden into a spa retreat. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
Live to London on DAB Digital Radio. To New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
8:30 a.m. in London, 9:30 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Good morning, everyone. I'm Naira Chehich.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Roger, 30 minutes into the equity market open. It's risk on pretty much cross-asset today. The Stock 600 up 1.7%. Regional equity benchmarks all in the green by at least 1%. You've got the CAC 40 leading up more than 2%. And we saw a late turnaround in the US equity session yesterday into positive territory. Futures now up more than 1% on Dow, S&P and NASDAQ futures. Is this all to do with optimism around the easing of lockdowns in California? The 10-year Treasury yield up 3.5 basis points, 67 handle. The 10-year Bund yield moves higher by 2 basis points. The 10-year gilt yield up by almost the same as well. You're seeing a little bit of dollar weakness on the Bloomberg dollar index, so across a lot of G10, although that's kind of recouped some of the losses now to trade pretty much flat. The Aussie dollar has been one of the outperformers to the upside. The RBA stood pat. And oil on its 5th day of gains, best run of gains in more than 9 months. WTI at 22.64 up 11%. Brent 29.17 up 7.2%. Roger.
Yeah, one breaking news story across the terminal. Swedish first quarter GDP, the indicator falls 0.3% in the quarter. That news breaking in the last few moments here on the terminal. But let's go to the UK. And some of today's top stories include Boris Johnson running into criticism from opponents and allies as he prepares to announce plans to reopen the economy. Unions want legally binding risk assessments before staff are allowed to return to the office. But fellow Conservative MPs are urging the Prime Minister to ease the lockdown and start getting people back to work.
Meanwhile, persuading people it's not dangerous to return to work will be crucial to rebooting the British economy. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, is looking at ways to unwind the government's furlough programme. Speaking to ITV News on Monday, Sunak said the scheme won't end abruptly at the end of June, but warned it could not continue indefinitely.
To anyone who's anxious about this, I want to give them reassurance today that there will be no cliff edge to the furlough scheme. I'm working as we speak to figure out the most effective way to wind down the scheme and ease people back into work in a measured way.
That was Chancellor Rishi Sunak speaking to ITV News.
And in top corporate news, BNP Paribas has warned full-year earnings will take a pounding from the virus outbreak. That's after the bank set aside more cash to cover problem loans and posted a $200 million hit at its trading unit. The French lender said net income this year without any new crisis could be 15% to 20% lower than in 2019. Speaking to Bloomberg, the CFO, Lars Machenil, gave his outlook as to when the French economy might return to normal.
In our view, that pickup of the economy back to a normalization in the economy will be happening at the best by the end of the year, and therefore a return in GDP to normal will not be before 2022.
And that's the BNP Paribas CFO, Lars Machenil.
Now, Danish jewellery firm Pandora has accelerated book building and secured additional loan facilities in order to withstand what it calls a stress test scenario. This as all of its physical stores remain closed amid the pandemic. Still, first quarter EBIT and revenue beat estimates. For more, we're pleased to be joined by Pandora CEO Alexander Lasik. Alexander, great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme. I do want to kick off with you opening a new credit line, because one thing that you did say today is that you have the liquidity to sustain a stress test scenario where all physical stores are temporarily closed throughout 2020. What, though, will happen to your liquidity and credit position if stores are closed longer than the 2020 scenario?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Of course, we have secured this additional facilities, including the selling of our treasury shares, in order to withstand a prolonged, difficult situation due to the COVID scenario. We have, with this additional funding secured, we'll be kind of managing a situation all the way in through parts of 21, if that happens. But, if we have a situation where the world is locked down for the next 12 months, I think that Pandora's issues are probably not going to be the worst we're facing.
Yes, that's true, of course. It could be an absolute disaster of a kind we can't even begin to imagine. But, Alexander, let's take the optimistic scenario that your stores can return to pre-corona activity levels after the national lockdowns. How long will that take, if China's any kind of guide?
Well, it's interesting, and I just have to correct you. All our stores are not closed. In fact, we have stores in Australia that have remained open, most of them throughout this situation. Sweden, not the biggest place in the world, but nevertheless, I'm from there, so why not? Then we have Germany that just reopened most of its stores 8 days ago. Austria started reopening a little bit. So, in fact, roughly 30% of our store network is open at this point in time. Now, how fast this thing goes, initially when we looked at the results from China, then of course we took that and said, okay, let's model the comeback on the basis of what's happened in China, both on and offline. And of course, when Germany opened 8 days ago, we had that expectation. But Germany has not fully, but almost closed the gap in 1 week, which took China, 8 to 10 weeks. So now all of a sudden we have, am I now looking at two outliers, or am I looking at some strange averages? So I think my conclusion is that each country will have its own pattern, which is partly going to be have to do with how strong we are as a brand. It's partly going to be how quickly governments allow the stores to reopen, how quickly they allow consumers to go and shop, what type of social distancing measures that they impose. So there's a number of factors here which are at play. I think the way we've thought about it was Q2 is probably not going to be any funny reading for most retailers. Q3 will see a good sequential comeback, and then Q4 we're back to kind of normal. That's our, let's say, best case scenario, and from there it all unwinds.
Right, so best case scenario is back to normal in physical stores in Q4. So that's the physical stores, Alexander. But in terms of the online business, can you tell us a little bit about that? Have you taken measures to boost sales? Have the sales been robust? Have they increased? What can you tell us?
Oh my God, I can speak about this for hours, but I don't have that time, so I'll make it very
please
brief.
Don't.
When we did the brand relaunch in September, we actually almost tripled the growth rate on our e-commerce business. So we've kind of changed the tech stack, we've changed the front end of the experience, and consumers are responding with high conversion rates and high engagement rates. So that business was growing at a, let's call it 25% growth rate in Q4. Coming into the first quarter of this year, it continued to accelerate, which had nothing to do with COVID. So that business underlying the e-com business was growing almost at 30%. Then as we got into April, when all the stores shut, that jumped to 300% growth rates, which obviously I don't see being a sustainable situation once the stores start to reopen. But the underlying health of our e-commerce business is phenomenal. And we've, of course, when COVID hit, we redirected most of our advertising spend to drive the business towards e-commerce. And then we took the rest down because that couldn't be sustained. But so we keep investing heavily in what we label as data-driven growth, which is not just the e-com business, but it's also the whole marketing aspect. So yes, it's a big investment for us.
Alexander, we're interested, of course, in a lot of companies' credit situations at the moment. What about your credit position? Are you doing something to strengthen it? I mean, the CFO previously said you might well issue bonds for the first time in the long term. I mean, is the virus situation made that possible bond sale more or less likely, would you say?
So what we did was when this whole thing started kind of unraveling in January in China, we immediately crafted 3 core scenarios, let's say. So we talked about the first one, which we call the kind of scenario A. Then you have scenario B, which, this thing comes back a little bit slower and Q4 doesn't come back to the tune that we're normally expecting. And then you have the kind of nightmare situation. So we looked at those 3 scenarios and said, okay, what if the nightmare scenario actually happens? Do we have money to sustain the business and the company? And the answer at that point in time was no. So that's why we've gone out and we've secured an additional 3 billion Danish krone facility with our partnership banks. And we are selling treasury shares as we speak. So when that is all said and done, we expect to kind of raise somewhere close to 4.5 billion additional funding. Then we've looked at covenants and had a conversation with all our banks. We raised the covenants. That's the only covenant we have. And then we've also prolonged maturities of some of the funding we have. So essentially, we've taken a very, very conservative approach when it deals with our balance sheet and our cash. In order for us to be able to stand through this crisis. So, we stand on very firm ground when it comes to the financial situation. That's
Alexander,
the defensive part of my... Yeah, sorry.
I just want to ask you defensively, we've got 30 seconds, but if your best case scenario doesn't play out, the coronavirus continues into 2021, what happens? Job cuts?
We would have to, if we end up in the C scenario, we have to end up looking at the entire cost profile of Pandora, like every other business, I suppose. Yes, right. They will have to cut everywhere, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, Alexander, thank you so much for being with us. Alexander Lasik there, Pandora CEO, bringing us up to speed with his options, looking at the possible extent of the virus crisis and what happens the other side of it. This is Daybreak Europe. This is Bloomberg.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. That's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
No company wants to be involved in an international dispute. But when disagreements arise, you need expertise at your side. Take a closer look at ICDR, the International Center for Dispute Resolution. Backed by the longevity and strength of the American Arbitration Association, the ICDR is the world's leading provider of cross-border dispute resolution services, handling more cases than any other institution. Find out why global expertise matters. Visit ICDR.org.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. The university helped biomedical engineering professor Tara Alvarez launch a startup that may revolutionize vision therapy.
Our startup through NJIT is called Oculomotor Technology. We create virtual reality vision therapy in a head-mounted display. So it's gaming, and basically we're sugarcoating the therapy so that children and young adolescents don't even realize they're doing therapy. To accomplish this, we need biomedical engineers, which are here on NJIT campus, computer scientists, artists, people that are into story development, and then we're collaborating with a lot of the large pediatric medical centers. This idea of a startup culture is extremely important to not just NJIT and the National Science Foundation, but also to the U.S. as a societal whole.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more...
The trampoline that makes Dad feel like a kid again. The projector that turns film night into outdoor cinema night. The hot tub that transforms your garden into a spa retreat. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
Helen is dreaming of fighting a flock of 40-foot flamingos. But in reality, she's helping fight COVID-19 in her sleep. Like thousands of others, she's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
Keep fighting, Helen.
Search Vodafone DreamLab and join the Dream Team tonight.
DreamLab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip number 4, relax. Don't feel like you have to be productive during these stressful days? This is the perfect time to focus on yourself. Whether that means meditating, taking a bath, sleeping in, or doing nothing at all, take a deep breath and treat yourself. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen from Home on TuneIn.
If you've used TuneIn much, you probably already know how to favorite your top stations and podcasts for quick access. But did you know you can organize your favorites too? Under your favorites page on the TuneIn app, hold and drag the stations to arrange the order to your liking.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your 7th inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting 9 podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA Show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in a front office, and when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I jumped high school here in New York
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn. With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, we are seeing European stock markets trading a little bit higher. So currently the Stock 600 up 1.8%. Similarly so for the FTSE and the DAX. The CAC 40 gaining 2.4% in Paris. US futures also firmly in the green. It follows a similar trading day in Asia where most markets were closed, but the Hang Seng still are trading and up 1.2%. Now, over in the bond markets, we are seeing 10-year Treasury yields gaining on this risk-on mood. So currently up more than 3 basis points at 67 basis points. We're seeing similar moves for bond yields at negative 54 at the moment. 10-year gilt yields up a basis point at 24 basis points. I'm also watching Aussie benchmark yields jumping 4 basis points after the Reserve Bank of Australia left rates unchanged. In turn, we did see the Aussie dollar pair some of its earlier gains, currently up 0.2%. Similarly so for the Kiwi dollar. They're gaining on the back of a bit of weakness in the greenback this morning. We are seeing the yen holding around 106.7. Sterling slightly bid at 124. The euro a bit weaker, just below 109 at the moment. The offshore yuan has been climbing. It was very close to that 7.20 level, now around 7.12 at the moment, so something to keep an eye on there. In commodities, we are seeing WTI extending gains with the spread between June and July contracts now at its narrowest level in a month. Currently, we are seeing crude at $22 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, here's Len Garens with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. Global deaths from the coronavirus pandemic have exceeded 251,000 as countries around the world move closer to easing restrictions. Hong Kong's leader says the time has come to lift social distancing measures here in Europe. Italy, Spain, Greece, Portugal and Germany are beginning to reopen their economies. Meanwhile, in the US, California and Arizona have been taking steps towards the new normal. Another health threat from coronavirus has emerged: blood clots. Doctors around the world are noting a range of clotting-related disorders, and they seem to appear days or months after respiratory symptoms have been resolved. That says it's not unusual for infections to raise the risk of clotting. It's been seen in viruses from the Spanish flu to HIV and Ebola. And the world's longest flight has been put on hold as the coronavirus crisis stalls travel. Qantas Airways was aiming to fly direct between Sydney, London and New York. The airline was planning to start the ultra-long-haul services in 2023 and was well into its preparations. Global news 24 hours a day on air and a quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, I want to go back to the coronavirus and blood clot story because I've been fascinated by that this morning. What's really interesting is that it means that at times the treatments might be changed. Rather than looking at ventilators, doctors start looking more at anticoagulants.
And I think, Naira, what this highlights also is we're just learning more and more about this virus and how to treat it as time goes by, really, and more doctors working on it and the studies that are concluded from it. So this is another interesting revelation in how to treat the virus and what is best to do.
I think it's interesting also, Nara, because early on we were hearing about this coronavirus toe. They couldn't understand why people seem to be having foot problems, and it seems to be part of this clot issue. So exactly as Leanne was saying, more and more we're getting to know, but so much we still don't know.
Exactly. As far as we understand so far, it's about the clot starting in the lower leg and then travelling up, causing complications in the lungs, in the heart, but also in other vital organs like the kidneys and even the bowels. And it goes some way to explaining why, tragically, there have been, all the deaths obviously have been tragic, but also deaths with people where they've had no underlying health conditions, and it's been difficult to understand exactly why that's happened. Perhaps these clots go some way to explaining that, and also risk further complications even after patients have recovered. By the way, it's one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg in the past hour and the past 8 hours as well. Let's go now to Stephen Bell, Chief Economist at BMO Global Asset Management, who joins us down the line to talk more about the economic and market impact of coronavirus. Stephen, delighted to have you with us on the programme. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, Goldman and Morgan Stanley came out pretty much simultaneously with calls this week talking about the world economy bottoming out. Goldman saying that economic activity has probably bottomed now. Morgan Stanley saying a number of the high-frequency indicators they track suggest the economy is in the process of bottoming out. Are you seeing the same?
Yes, we all look at the same indicators. And first of all, we have these high-frequency indicators which were not available in the last big recession 10 years ago, and they are showing a slow bottoming out. I think that's the message. Bottoming out, yes. I mean, the lockdowns came in place in Europe, the United States, a bit after Asia, and there's an immediate collapse and a slow pickup. I think the more interesting ones, though, are China, which is 2 months ahead of us, showing, yes, industrial production's probably got back to where it's going to be because of weak demand. My brother's company has 2 factories in China, and he said, well, we could be at full capacity, but there's no demand, so we're not. But the more interesting ones are areas where consumers had been very hesitant. So they weren't limited by government diktat. They just felt cautious about using the subway, visiting attractions, and that's beginning to pick up. So I think instead of consumers never eating in a restaurant again, they're just going to take a bit of time. And I think that's very encouraging for the longer-term recovery in Europe and the United States. So whilst these lockdowns being eased in Europe and the United States very tentative, we can look forward to a more significant recovery at the same time as we're getting this truly awful data on the economy and corporate earnings.
Yeah, Stephen, it's interesting. I mean, and to make the obvious point, obviously what we're looking at is backward-looking data, and we're not really putting into all this, and perhaps investors and analysts aren't either, the strong chance, almost inevitable, of a second wave, that once things have been opened up and then have to close down again, we might be talking in the third or fourth quarter perhaps of this year, that might actually make the thing worse. So perhaps this analysis maybe doesn't take that into account.
Well, I think you raise a very good point, and China eased its lockdown, and other Asian countries eased their lockdowns only when new cases were much smaller than the new cases when Europe and certainly the United States are easing their lockdown. And again, we should be cautious. You know, Italy's allowing restaurants to serve takeaways. They've been closed. Spanish children were allowed out of doors only last week. You know, other countries didn't have that severity of lockdown. But the second wave hasn't happened in Asia. Singapore linked dormitories of migrant workers, etc., etc. So the very strong forecast of second waves from expert epidemiologists haven't happened in Asia. And if they're small, they're containable. And that's why the dilemma is don't open too early because you will get a second wave.
Yeah, the second wave is definitely one issue, and it's one that Jan Hatzius at Goldman points to in the sense of the biggest downside risk to the outlook is that infection rates reaccelerate sharply as the economy reopens. The second wave is one thing, Stephen, but the other is this assumption that we have this pent-up demand. What if it turns out the consumer demand, when we get reopenings of economies and an easing of lockdowns to any material extent, what if that demand is not pent up, but it's actually restricted because people have lost their jobs?
So obviously the two are linked. If the economy doesn't revive, the jobs don't revive, and that's the normal process. First of all, whilst governments have massively increased their borrowing and can just roll over at these tiny interest rates, that does not apply to consumers who may have built up their credit card debt. Businesses have built up their overdraft facilities, short-term borrowing. They need to get those debts lower. So I do expect people to be relatively cautious. And, you know, pent-up demand, if you could see me, you'd see that a hairdresser isn't an immediate requirement for me, but people who have a bit more hair, that's pent-up demand. Other issues will be there. But over a few months, they will need to boost their saving. Corporates will need to improve their cash flow. So I still think that although the world will never be the same again after this virus, we will get back to normal levels of economic activity. People will get their job again because this recession's been so severe and so sharp. It's easier to re-employ people who haven't lost their skills, become detached from their employer. So I feel we'll recover much more quickly than the rather more gradual employment gains we had post the global financial crisis.
But Stephen, if we're talking about haircuts, the haircut that the governments who've been piling all this money and may have to take is very much, I think, in the back of mind. Certainly here in the UK, when you think about half of all adults in the country now being employed by the government, really, even with the interest levels as they are, can governments maintain this level of support? Rishi Sunak saying, well, there will have to come an end.
Oh, absolutely. You cannot close down half of the economy and continue to pay everyone, you know, even 80% of what they had before. That's clearly impossible. But we're talking about months of this happening, not years. So yes, there's an extraordinary response in the UK, unmatched really anywhere else, where they're putting all these people on government books, just paying them basically when they're not doing any work. But it is a temporary phenomenon to restrict this most severe recession, certainly the most severe in post-war history, just to prevent that getting out of control. The multiplier effects, where I've lost my job, I cut my spending, someone else loses their job. They've in a sense cut that off.
Stephen Bell, Chief Economist at BMO Global Asset Management. Great to have you with us. Thank you so much. European equities up 1.9%. This is Bloomberg.
Did you know that players of People's Postcode Lottery have raised over £500 million for charities and good causes? They've also won £63 million in prizes so far this year, and it could be your postcode next. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 21st of May to play in the June draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus. Conditions apply. Play responsibly.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Butcher Selection quarter pounder beef burgers, get a 4-pack for just £2.28. And salmon fillets, get a 2-pack for only £2.97. So dinner's always a winner. At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores online, subject to availability.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
The idea is to really hold the economy in suspended animation until we get control of this virus.
We are very much in a picture of monetary dominance.
We will get slower growth. I mean, let's not get confused about that.
We are in a national crisis. I think it is for all parties to pull together.
The euro area is facing an economic contraction of a magnitude and speed that are unprecedented in peacetime.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe on Bloomberg Radio.
A very good morning from London. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And a good morning from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin. I'm Matt Miller. You're listening to Daybreak Europe on London DAB Digital Radio.
It's all about the unwinding of the lockdown here in the UK, Matt, this morning. We have seen the smallest daily increase in deaths from the disease since the end of March, but we've got 6.3 million people have been furloughed by the government. So how do you unwind that scheme? The Chancellor yesterday was saying that it won't be a sudden stop. It'll be gradually terminated. And yet, you know, it's going to be difficult trying to get people back to business.
Man, furlough has to be the word of the year. We haven't used that word in other recessions. Previously, for Americans, furlough means when you let somebody out of prison for the weekend, you know?
Oh, wow.
There was a famous case of Michael Dukakis had furloughed a prisoner who then went on to cause further trouble, and it contributed to Dukakis losing the election. But now that's what we call layoffs or getting fired, right?
Well, not exactly, because it's actually the opposite in the UK, right? Isn't it? Being furloughed is that you get to keep your salary at 80% subsidised by the government, and you get to keep your job. So in a way, it's sort of the opposite of what it might be in the US. It's that you get to keep your job. The business keeps you on their books, and the idea is then when we power up in the next few weeks that all of those people will just come straight back into work. But the other really great read on the Bloomberg terminal, I think, the other big thing is going to be antibody tests, isn't it? And there's a really good write-up. Stephanie Baker.
Can't wait to get one.
Yeah, in London. Well, she has tried to get some. In fact, she did manage to get hold of 4 at varying costs from about £6 to about a couple of £100, but none of them were conclusive. So I think there's perhaps some.
I've seen the ads already on Instagram and Facebook, so I assume that they're fake. But yes. I'm excited to get my hands on a real. By the way, anything I see on social media, I assume it's fake right away. But I'm waiting to get my hands on a real test, because I'm sure I had the coronavirus, right? I mean,
yeah, me and a lot of people, I imagine.
For sure. Although the bad news is you don't know what those antibodies mean in terms of immunity, right? We're not sure if having had the coronavirus means that you won't necessarily get it again, and it'll be really fascinating when they come out with that. For me, on the Bloomberg terminal, the insane stories that I've seen are from UK car sales.
Yeah.
Down 97% in April for the worst month since 1946. You hear Christine Lagarde in our intro there saying it's going to be the biggest contraction in peacetime. The last time the UK sold this few cars was 1946, just after, because you couldn't really sell cars when they were trying to piece London back together. In the last month, only 4,000 cars were sold in the entire United Kingdom. 4,000.
Yeah, it's incredible numbers, isn't it? But there's going to be plenty of push in terms of trying to get government help for those businesses in the UK. The plane makers, the car makers, all of those businesses really in dire straits. Let me give you just a brief look at the markets, though, before we continue our lovely conversation. US stocks 600 actually in a positive frame of mind, 1.8% higher for European equities this morning. FTSE 100 also gains 1.6%. Xetra DAX in Germany 1.9% higher, and actually the CAC 40 bounces higher 2.2%. It was a very different picture yesterday when we saw all the major equity benchmarks drop more than 3%. Looking to the US Open, also higher there, 1.2%. We've had the big markets in Asia shut though this morning, so Japan, China, South Korea. As for the bond market, it's 54 basis points for German Bund yields, up by a basis point, and US benchmark yields at 66 basis points. The other big story, though, Matt, of course, is in the oil markets. 5 days of gains for oil futures. $22.16 the barrel for WTI crude futures this morning. Brent crude at $28.85, so gaining 6% right now.
Well, guess who that doesn't help?
No, we're still in the 20s.
It doesn't help the airlines, which I thought was interesting. I talked to Michael O'Leary about this on Friday. I said, hey, isn't this at least a tailwind that you get paid to hold fuel? And he was like, no, sadly, we locked in hedges at $61 a barrel. Oh. Ouch. So this is killing them too. And by the way, Ryanair came out with another shocking number this morning. Passenger traffic there fell 99.6% in April.
Yeah, and
they only had 40,000 passengers in the entire month.
Yeah. Really, really quite frightening numbers, aren't they? But look, at least the lockdown is easing a little bit. It has begun, certainly in Europe's hardest hit economies, and that has kind of powered, I think, a little bit the risk-on mood today. But actually, if you ask our next guest, it's too early to take heart that we'll truly see the economic impact of the pandemic over, because he doesn't think that's going to happen until the fourth quarter of 2020. John Rowe joins us now, head of multi-asset funds at Legal and General Investment Management. Really good to have you on the programme, John. You argue actually that the disruption to the global economy is going to last a lot longer than currently anticipated. So just framework that for us. How do you quantify it?
So it's the two key questions that we're wrestling with are post-lockdown, what measures do countries have to keep in place to keep the infection rate below 1? And what economic impact does that have? And then secondly, what do people voluntarily choose to do regardless of government guidance? And it's that combination that we think will continue to have extended economic impact. And the longer it goes on, the greater the chance it seeps into the broader economy, undermines confidence and tightens credit conditions. So for example, if you take people over 60, we've just spent 2 months telling them all how desperately exposed they are to the coronavirus. So when you then tell them great news, you can leave the house and go back to normal, a lot of them will choose not to. And that's the reality of what we face. And as stories start to come out, as they have done in the last couple of days, around blood clots and longer term health issues that can be caused, then even younger people will look at that and think, well, God, I don't know what I'm letting myself in for here. I'm going to play cautiously. And in a leveraged economy, which of course all developed markets are, they're just not well set up for prolonged periods of depressed activity.
No, it reminds me of my bachelor party, actually, John. You know, I was supposed to be getting married in, 3 weeks from now, and I had planned this big dude sailor trip in the British Virgin Islands. And now, of course, we pushed the wedding a year, and so I pushed the bachelor party a year as well. But there's a bunch of guys on my crew who are like 60, you know, my dad's friends, and they're like, yeah, I don't know if I'll even be able to go next March, which is a serious, I mean, that really makes you think, right? If they don't even know if they're going to be able to go next March, are these people going to be going to restaurants? Are these people going to be flying anywhere at all? I mean, these are people with, you know, it's a generation of people that have money. they're not going to be really spending it other than ordering stuff off Amazon, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that's really the concern that we have. And if you start to think of it, so when I was on around a month ago, I talked about this actually just being the beginning of the real problem. And actually, that's the way we see it: is that this is going to develop into a very normal recession, but a potentially very deep one, because the normal things you would do to stimulate an economy aren't going to have the same impact, because you can't force people to go back to normal activity. So that's really the risk that we face, is that this takes a lot longer than expected, and that is the part we feel. So we think the market narrative and equity prices in particular are pricing a big Q3 rebound, which is almost inevitable post-lockdown, but then a return to normality into Q4 that we just don't think will emerge. There's a propaganda campaign. Government's deliberately not talking about this.
What about cars, John? I mean, cars, and motorcycles especially, are legit social distancing. So for those people that aren't going to be going to restaurants, they're not going to be flying anywhere, no more big vacations, are they still going to get out there and buy cars, especially if government assistance, if government stimulus comes in to support them?
So autos and parts is one of the worst performing sectors in Europe, say, year to date. And yet actually there is quite a strong narrative. If you look at the things that people are most concerned about post-lockdown, it's the use of public transport. And so if you're worried about using planes and you're worried about using trains, the only thing left is automobiles. And so as you look to domestically holiday more often to reduce the need to get on planes, and also people look to go back to work and get away with their family. I mean, my wife's desperate to leave the house, maybe with me, maybe without. But either way, we're going to need a way of getting there. We're people who only use public transport. We don't even own a car. And yet we're going to be forced to lease one over the next 18 months to allow ourselves to go about and enjoy leisure activities. And we feel that's the kind of activity that really could provide a stimulus, and an underappreciated one.
Oh, fascinating.
You enjoy that, John. You owe it to yourself. You've earned it.
I'm sure that Matt can give you all the best advice on which car you should be leasing, John. Thank you so much for joining us. John Moe, Head of Multi-Asset Funds at Legal and General Investment Management. Matt, if you had a car, if you were going to lease a new car, what would it be in the next 12 to 18 months?
That's a question I spend a lot of time thinking about.
Really?
And it really depends on the situation. If I were John and I was looking to get out of London, you need something that's not huge,
yes,
but you also want, he has earned a sweet ride. So, maybe he needs a Porsche. I'd say a 911 for John Rowe. All right, let's get over to Leanne Garens. I see her in a Mercedes AMG GTS. Leanne?
In white, Matt. But thank you very much for that. Well, let's start here in the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson is running into criticism from opponents and allies as he prepares to announce plans to reopen the economy. Unions want legally binding risk assessments before staff return to their jobs. But members of the Prime Minister's own Conservative Party are urging him to ease the lockdown and start getting people back to work. Meanwhile, Europe's hardest hit nations are settling down to a new normal as it slowly returns to public life. Italy, Spain, Greece, Portugal and Germany are all relaxing restrictions. While these moves will ease pressure on economies, social distancing will remain in place. Yesterday, many people in Italy returned to work as activities in all industries restarted. But as Bloomberg's Alessandro Speciali says, it will be crucial to reevaluate if the easing of the lockdown sparks a second wave of new infections.
The pace of the coronavirus outbreak in Italy continued to slow on Monday, just as more than 4 million workers returned to work in a partial easing of the containment measures. Health authorities reported 1,221 cases for the 24-hour period. That's the fewest since March 10. In Rome, Alessandro Speciale, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And And another health threat from coronavirus has emerged: blood clots. Doctors around the world are noting a range of clotting-related disorders, and they seem to appear days or months after respiratory symptoms have been resolved. That said, it is not unusual for infections to raise the risk of clotting. It has been seen in viruses from the Spanish flu to HIV and Ebola. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thank you so much, Leanne Gerrans, there with the world news. Well, in just a moment, we're going to be bringing you another episode of Brussels Edition. Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo is going to be focusing on the European economy as many countries begin to ease those restrictions. She'll be speaking to Lawrence Boone, the chief economist at the OECD. He's been talking about the danger of widening inequality because of the virus. Maria Tadeo will have that for us next. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Who's in your corner? At Commonwealth Financial Network, our advisors would say we are. Our supportive environment lets you be true to yourself, and our culture of accountability means we don't just ask for your feedback. We act on it, so we can deliver the solutions you need to enrich the lives of your clients and build the business you've always dreamed of. Ready to discover the difference? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Emily Chang.
Work.com is Salesforce's latest effort to provide companies with a suite of tools to help them assess employee readiness and get back to work quickly. I spoke earlier with Salesforce Chair and CEO Mark Benioff about how it all works. What is your outlook on how long the economic downturn lasts, and what does that mean for Salesforce? How long do you believe this contraction will go on?
This is my first pandemic. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure this out as I go. I didn't know what PPE was 90 days ago. Now, we've done everything we can to make sure that our hospitals are well equipped. And that's also why we built this suite of software, because we believe that this is important going forward. It's why we're going to have a chief health officer at Salesforce for the first time, because I don't know how we can manage a large corporation around the world without it. When we look at the economic environment, are we in a recessionary environment? Are we in a depressionary environment? We know we're going to be in one of the most severe economic environments that we've ever been in as a company. And we're taking actions now to make sure that we can be successful, but also that our customers can also be successful in an environment like this.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York City, I'm Anne-Marie Horder with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. I want to start with some breaking news. We've been waiting from the German court. They're ruling on the ECB's emergency asset purchase scheme. German judges in this case say some action was unconstitutional. After that, we have German 10-year yields rising 2 basis points. We're trading now at negative 0.54% on the German 10-year yield. In the foreign exchange market, we are seeing 1.09 the euro dollar for the euro dollar. When it comes to equities, European stocks rising alongside Asian shares. Also, U.S. futures point to a higher start in New York. We should note Japan, China, and South Korea are closed today. On the Stock 600, Europe's benchmark index, we are up 1.6%. One of the biggest gainers this morning is Total. It's a biggie heavyweight index on the oil and gas sector, which is doing well. Even though profit plunged 35%, they're cutting capex. They kept the dividend, but they are offering to pay it through scrip, through shares instead of through cash. Oil today gaining for a 5th day. We are seeing big moves in the oil market this morning. WTI is up 8%, $22 a barrel. Brent up more than 5%, $28 a barrel. Possibly some demand recovery there. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garens with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Anne-Marie, and thank you. In China, state-run media has unleashed a torrent of abuse against U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. They're calling him evil and a liar. Pompeo has said there was enormous evidence that the coronavirus outbreak came from a high-security lab in the city of Wuhan. Still, the Chinese report stayed away from direct attacks on President Trump. Now, the European Commission has got promises of $8 billion from world leaders and private organizations to help fund a vaccine to cure the deadly coronavirus. The pledging event was hosted by the European Union, but the United States was notably absent. It underscores the way the two are handling the crisis. The US says it is putting money into its own efforts. However, the EU is insisting a global catastrophe has to be handled through global cooperation. And from today, Ireland is easing some of its coronavirus restrictions. People over the age of 70 will be allowed to leave their homes. Ireland's Prime Minister Leo Varadkar has set out a 5-stage plan to ease measures at 3-week intervals, starting with phase 1 on the 18th of May. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Garens. This is Bloomberg.
This is the Brussels edition, Bloomberg's briefing on what matters most in the European Union this week.
And this is our special episode of Brussels Edition. In a moment, we'll speak to Lawrence Boone of the OECD. But I want to break with Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo some news lines. German judges in the case, the decision coming through on the ECB's QE program, that is from the last bailout. They're talking about the case that some action is unconstitutional. So the ECB decisions are not backed by EU treaty. That, according to the German court. Maria, what do you make of this decision? Quite a surprise that the judges have ruled against this.
Well, it's a big decision. It's a huge decision. Actually, everyone in markets, I'm sure, I mean, not just us, but really everyone that owns a terminal was looking at this today because it's just so significant. You have a 7-1 ruling that says some of the aspects, and you make a very good point. We're not talking about the PPP program right now to deal with the coronavirus, because this is the old QE program, and they're saying they believe some action may have been unconstitutional, and the decision is not really, and I mean the ECB decisions are not really backed up by EU treaties. What is worth keeping in mind, of course, is that national countries do not set regulation for European institutions. That's a separate court. But it is interesting, of course, because the German central bank is, well, the most influential central bank that you have on the board. And this carries perhaps repercussions as to whether the PPP could be challenged going forward. And that's why perhaps you're seeing that reaction in the Italian bond market that's a little bit shaky today, because that's really the impact. It's what can the European Central Bank do to shield the European economy, especially in the South. That was really the point of this.
You know, you're right to point out that clients really care about this. I've got my terminal set up to alert me when there are readership spikes, when, a lot of people at the same time click on the same headline, and I got 11 readership spikes in the span of 5 minutes on this issue alone. So it was like boom, 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 boom. Everybody is watching this trial, and it's pretty amazing that the German court is saying the ECB decisions were not backed or are not supported by the EU treaty, because the richest and largest economy in the entire European Union says that this club is the treasurer in this club is acting outside the law. That's a serious problem, and it doesn't go, I think, the ruling far enough to create waves for the PEP program right now. But Maria, how will this influence the European Central Bank in the work it's doing right now during this current crisis?
Right, and you make a good point. The German court had taken issue with two things: that monetary financing, as you know very well, is not something that the ECB can do. That is not something that it's legal. It's not something it's allowed to do as it stands. And then secondly, is this idea that the ECB perhaps is already overstepping its mandate. Now, I think the key here would be potentially in the details. That is what we really need to see in the decision, because also you make another good point, which is where will this leave the European Central Bank in its relationship with the German Central Bank, which is already very tense. And we've also seen, and not so much now with Christine Lagarde, but back in the day, Matt, I'm sure you remember there was so much tension between Mario Draghi and Jens Weidmann. Many say that the reason why Weidmann did not become his successor, it has to do with the fact that he had to take on that line, that he had to take on that very German line of perhaps we don't need as much stimulus as the European Central Bank is putting forward. But I think it will be a lot of it in the detail. It's a very complex case. There has been a lot of back and forth for years on this. But yeah, once again, it brings up that perennial issue of, what exactly is Germany's place in the European Central Bank? What's the tone that it should take?
Dad.
Yeah, well,
it's the dad in this situation.
Well, Jens Weidmann's actually been speaking this morning, so worth noting that he's talking about the fact that you shouldn't lose sight of the eventual exit from stimulus. So he's making some comments about the current issue that the ECB has dealing with the pandemic and what Germany will do. Bloomberg's Mirror today. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on that breaking news line that German judges in the ECB case say that some action is unconstitutional. We'll be back in a moment. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. We're live from London and Berlin.
With a Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr. Members of the U.S. women's national team say they will appeal after they lost a legal challenge over equal pay. A judge ruled against the equal pay allegations the team was making and said the women's team can't retroactively deem their agreement worse than the men's team since they have had years of winning seasons.
It sort of, for me, missed the point, but it was very disappointing, to be honest.
Megan Rapinoe tells ABC she does not see the validity in the judge's argument.
If I earn $1 every time I play and a man earns $3, just because I win 10 games and he only wins 3 games, and so I made $10 and he made $9, I'm not sure how that's me making more money while having to essentially win everything that we could possibly have won over these past few years. 2 World Cups and just about every game we played.
The team sued back in 2019. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
A social distancing tip.
While the CDC urges you to avoid close contact, like hugging or shaking hands, there are other non-physical ways to say hello. Wave, wink, use sign language, salute, smile, give the peace sign, throw up an air high five, do jazz hands. Remember, stay a minimum of 6 feet or 2 arms length away from others, and stay home if you can. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Fox.
This is an important message from the government.
For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
If you're buying anything online, take care and don't pay by money transfer. Always pay by card. Take time to check the seller is genuine, and if you're unsure, then stop and don't send any money.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Pauline. Love may be blind, but it has a new smell. Pauline, the new fragrance from Euro Millions winner Pauline Hinchcliffe.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £42 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is a quick message from QuickFit. That sound probably sums up how you're feeling about things right now. But QuickFit won't let it slow you down. If you have an essential journey to make, but your car needs new tires, don't worry. QuickFit's mobile fitting service will come to you. Keeping you safe on the road has never been more important. Visit quickfit.com to choose your tires and book your slot. QuickFit, still there when you need them.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
on the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning. From the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin, I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Caroline Hebke here in London. A warm welcome to the programme. Matt, in the markets this morning, actually some risk on. We gained 1.8% for the Euro Stoxx 600, a similar level for the FTSE 100. The Xetra DAX up by 2.1%. CAC 40 also gains 2.3% this morning. We've had a number of big earnings reports from BNP Paribas, profit falling significantly, but their share price actually up by 5.2% right now. And Total shares boosted by their earnings, so 6.8% higher. As for the bond markets, we're seeing some gyration after the German court ruled on the ECB's last QE program. We're going to talk about that more in a moment. But in terms of German yields, at negative 51 basis points, so we gain 4 basis points. Italian BTPs at 1.77%, also up by 1 basis point. So basically yields going up, European bonds falling really across across the board, and also actually in the US, we trade at 67 basis points for US yields. Other things to note, the weakness of the pound in May, although we gained 0.2% this morning, 124.63. The euro at 1.0904, slightly weaker, but big jumps for WTI and Brent crude this morning at $22.37 the barrel for WTI crude. We're up by 9.7%, $29.18 for Brent crude, Matt.
All right, so there's a check of what's going on in the markets. Let's get back to the big story of the hour right now. It came before a German court, the question of whether or not the Bundesbank's participation in the ECB's quantitative easing program was constitutional, was legal. And the German judges in this decision ruled as expected, but they did say some of the actions of the Bundesbank's participation or of the ECB's quantitative easing program were unconstitutional, and indeed gave the ECB a 3-month ultimatum to fix quantitative easing. Still with us is Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo, our reporter on the ground out of Brussels, and joining us now is Bank Pictet and C global strategist Frederic Ducrozet. Fred, what do you think of this ruling? I mean, we've got a bunch of big red sticky headlines on the terminal. All of them have spiked in terms of client readership. How important is it?
Well, the complaints were rejected, so that's good news, but everything else is bad news. To me, it's, the details, the devil is in the details, and those details don't look that good. It's unclear. I'm no lawyer, and even for lawyers, it doesn't seem to be that clear to which extent actually the court can have an influence on the Bundesbank without any interference from the ECB or even the German government and parliament. There could be, to me, a political decision following this ruling. And as you said, there is a 3-month period now where the ECB needs to clarify or issue decisions. I don't really understand what they mean by that. We know why they are skeptical, and they list again the criteria under which the ECB asset purchase program would be legal. That includes the issuer limit. No more than 33% of bonds can be bought by the Bundesbank. It also includes the capital keys, the credit quality. But that was already known. So I'm not sure what the ECB will do. I'm not sure what the Bundesbank also will say. And that will be interesting to follow.
And Fred, it's Maria. I'm so happy you're joining us because you're known for your Twitter threads and you're doing this live for us, so it's great. But I just wanted to ask you a question. You know, when you read this, or at least the way I read it, is that they're saying, okay, QE is not monetary financing, but of course the ECB has exceeded its powers. That line, we've heard it before. But at this point, what do you think this does to Christine Lagarde? Because national courts don't really set legislation for EU institutions, but this is not a good look for her.
No, it's not. What I would say, again, it really comes down to the Bundesbank, because the Bundesbank is participating. We know Jens Weidmann is also skeptical, but I'm quite confident he doesn't share all the arguments of the court today. And in particular, I think he will make clear, and the Bundesbank has in the past, that all the programs, all of them, including the PDPP recently, that will be for a future story probably, are proportionate in the court's words. And that means proportionate to the economic circumstances, because inflation outlook was at risk, and that's something the Bundesbank always agrees in the end. Maybe the tools are debatable, maybe the modalities can be discussed, but the broad objective of the PSPP, in that case, the former QE program, should not be challenged in my view.
And is there any scenario, and I know this is, as you mentioned, really the question in which you see the German central bank not taking part in ECB policy, and I guess that would be, just from a symbolic perspective to the market, so detrimental to everything that the European Union is standing for at this point?
Absolutely. I think it would be, inconceivable. It's not possible to think about the Bundesbank not participating because of the singleness of monetary policy, because of the way the ECB implements monetary policy in a decentralized way. Actually, there are some practical solutions. You can think of delegating the asset purchases to other national central banks. You can even suspend maybe the purchases of German bonds for some time. From a market perspective, it's not an issue, but from a political/legal perspective, it's disaster, and that's something that they will, in my opinion, avoid at any cost.
Okay, but you know,
hang on. Wait, can I just slip in one question there, Fred? Avoid at any cost, including the cost of the German Constitution. Do you think that the German court isn't willing to sacrifice the EU for the German Constitution?
I'm not sure about the internal politics here. As you know, the president ended his term today. There is, to me, always some degree of political involvement in this kind of decision that I'm not aware of. But what I know is that the German government, the German parliament, the German Bundesbank, the central bank, they all backed the ECB actions throughout the crisis, including in 2012, when it was also very debatable from their perspective. And I think they will, because in the end it's about the viability of the monetary union, about the euro. And if, I don't know, Chancellor Merkel needs to step in, then she should. But from the Bundesbank's perspective, again, those arguments, they have been discussed in the past, and a decision was made. Reluctantly, they agreed on participating. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't. And by the way, when it comes to what may be a concern for me to the future complaints about PEPP, the new emergency program from the ECB, that's something that will bring us into next year, I believe. Then again, the economic circumstances have changed also. So on substance at least, I see no reason. In terms of legal decision and the politics at play here, I'm not sure what really happened today.
Yeah, I mean, look, the euro weaker 0.3% at the moment, and we see German bund yields rising 3 basis points. I mean, this is, I think, what we're trying to understand. How much of this is politics, and how much is this going to affect the markets?
Yes, and again, Jens Weidmann was talking at the same time as we got the decision. I would expect him to either issue a statement or maybe from the ECB also. I mean, they're working and they had to prepare for this decision today. So I would say in the wording as well, there is some sort of subtle conclusion that I think the Bundesbank can work around. In the worst case, the Bundesbank has said that they may actually stop participating. It's not, to me, a very strong order from the Constitutional Court here. And that's also something that the Bundesbank can say, look, we agree on some of those arguments, not all of them, but in any case, we are committed to participating to those programs, and we will not actually stop buying German bonds just because of this decision.
Right, and the wording from Weidmann will be so key because, of course, he's known as a mega hawk, but it's also interesting to note that even at times where there has been a lot of tension with the ECB, he's always been inclined to say that the Bundesbank needs to be there because it's a key pillar of it, but then we'll have to wait for that. What I do wanted to ask you is, if you're an Italian BTP holder today and you get to this decision, are things looking good for Italy at this point? Because a lot of this was also perhaps an issue there.
Well, yes and no, because this doesn't affect anything that the ECB has done recently, including PEPP. Again, that could be a concern in the future, but we have plenty of time ahead of us. The market is probably pricing in the long-term implications of this. Imagine if next year we get a decision and some sort of also political agreement within the ECB to, limit the amount of Italian bonds that they can buy in the future, and imagine a worst-case scenario where they have to perhaps even reduce the holdings in the future. So that's something that we may be seen in the price reaction today. Not that it will affect the ECB this year, but over the longer term, this may have some implications.
Okay, Frédéric Ducrozet, thank you so much for joining us this morning from Banque Pictet, a global strategist there, and also Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo for that special episode of Brussels Edition, where we had some live breaking news from Germany, from that German court about the ECB decision on QE. So a great conversation. Thank you for joining us both here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager, Learning the Lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Take the Bond Challenge. Use the free Interactive Brokers Bond Scanner to search their deep availability of U.S. government securities, 38,000 global corporate bonds, and 850,000 municipals. IBKR passes through the highest of all bids and lowest of all offers received at the electronic venues it accesses. We do not widen spreads, apply hidden fees, or mark up quotes. How many basis points does your current broker keep? Find out at ibkr.com/bonds.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Phishing emails are designed to trick you into giving away personal details. Messages might be about travel refunds, delivery tracking, or supermarket vouchers. Remember, never click on links or attachments in emails received out of the blue.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Another day inside? I've turned my place into a gymnasium. I'm using the stairs for lunging and the washing machine as a power plate. But if you'd rather shed pounds off your outgoings, take a few minutes to check your bank account for any unwanted direct debits. It's just another small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
Sports fans, this is David Jacoby telling you to check out the Chicago Bulls documentary, The Last Dance, as it continues this Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN.
Our biggest challenge is us. I am cursing this mentality of competitiveness.
Competition was an addiction.
Every game was a battle.
Dennis, get up here! And then, immediately after the show, listen to Jalen Jacoby's After Show podcast featuring The Last Dance director, Jason Ayre. Search Jalen and Jacoby to start listening today.
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Behind the highlight reels, championship rings, and colossal paychecks, there are sports stories that fuel, deepen, and even challenge our love for the game. For true tales of underdogs, anti-heroes, and game-changing innovators, explore a sports documentary on TuneIn, like Sports Wars, telling the origin stories of classic rivalries, Raise Sports, about the concussion crisis that threatens football's future, and Dunkumentaries, a podcast devoted to the beauty and power of the slam dunk. For these and more, search Sports Documentaries on TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning. From Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York City, I'm Amber Hodder with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. European stocks are rising this morning. Benchmark index up more than 1 3/10%, alongside Asian shares, and U.S. equity futures also pointing to a higher start here in New York City. Markets in Japan, China, and South Korea were closed today. On the Stock 600, the oil and gas sector is the biggest gainer by far, up 4 7/10%. Total is a big weight in that sector. Their profit plunged 35%, but that still beat analyst estimates. On top of that, they kept the dividend. Oil, for that part, is gaining today on WTI and Brent. WTI $22.20 a barrel. Brent $28.93 a barrel, nearly pushing $30 a barrel. Oil gaining for a fifth a day. And over in the currency and the bond market, it's all about what happened out of Germany. German judges, the top judges, in a ruling on the ECB, giving the ECB 3 months to fix the QE program. German 10-year yields are up this morning 2.7 basis points, as so are Italian yields, up 7.5 basis points this morning. And the currency market, we have the euro dollar fluctuating post that announcement. We were trading 1.09. Now the euro is weaker, 1.08. And I'll leave you with the British pound for those driving in London. We are at 1.24. That's a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garens with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Anne-Marie, and thank you. Well, let's start here in the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson is running into criticism from opponents and allies as he prepares to announce plans to reopen the economy. Unions want legally binding risk assessments before staff return to their jobs. But members of the Prime Minister's own Conservative Party are urging him to ease the lockdown and start getting people back to work. Another health threat from coronavirus has emerged: blood clots. Doctors around the world are noting a range of clotting-related disorders, and they seem to appear days or months after respiratory symptoms have been resolved. That said, it's not unusual for infections to raise the risk of clotting. It has been seen in viruses from the Spanish flu to HIV and Ebola. And finally, the world's longest flight has been put on hold as the coronavirus crisis stalls global travel. Qantas was aiming to fly direct between Sydney, London, and New York. The airline was planning to start the ultra-long services in 2023 and was well into its preparations. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Garens. This is Bloomberg. Matt.
Leanne, thank you very much for that. Now, just a few minutes until Daybreak America starts up out of the U.S. with Nathan Hager. He joins us now to tell us what he's got planned coming up. Nathan?
Yeah, we got him counting down here to that 5 o'clock hour on Wall Street when our show begins. We could be in for a turnaround Tuesday here, Matt. We've got a definite risk on feel to the markets this morning, with more states opening up, or at least signaling plans to do so, including the worst U.S. hotspots for the coronavirus, including New York and California. There is still the question, though, of whether states may be acting a little bit too quickly here. We've got details on an internal government document that's warning of a much bigger potential surge in coronavirus infections than the government is acknowledging publicly. We're going to talk about all this with Martin Lowe from State Street, get his take on where markets could be heading in this second quarter. We will also preview earnings from Disney this morning. It is going to be very interesting to hear if the entertainment giant signals what kind of recovery it thinks could come out the other side of coronavirus, with Hollywood, theme parks, just about everything Disney touches shut down during this pandemic. So hope you'll join me and Karen Moscow for all that much more coming up on this Cinco de Mayo edition of Bloomberg Daybreak.
Yes. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
See.
Yesterday, I forgot to say May the 4th be with you.
Yeah, we avoided that ourselves. I was keeping my fingers crossed for it, but Star Wars Day is coming on. But Disney touches Star Wars. Maybe we'll get a chance to.
Yeah, and it'll also be interesting to see how much this internal CDC document bothers traders this morning. Doesn't
seem to be so far, yeah.
No. All right, coming up, Nathan Hager then and Karen Moscow with Daybreak Americas on Sirius XM Channel 119. If you're listening on London DAB Digital Radio, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
A bit more about that risk-on mood, shall we, in the markets this morning and the easing of restrictions, because obviously it's happening here in Europe, particularly on Monday. Italy, Spain, Germany all began to lift some restrictions on people's movements. Globally, also, the pandemic has slowed down in terms of cases, although there are still 3.5 million coronavirus cases around the world and more than 250,000 deaths so far. But for more, let's bring in our guest this hour, John Normand, Head of Cross-Asset Fundamental Strategy at JP Morgan Chase. Good morning, John. Thank you for joining us. You write JP Morgan's House View, so I'm really keen to understand what your take is on the impact of the pandemic. Has growth basically bottomed out? We had a couple of views in that direction from Goldman Sachs, for example. Jan Hatzius suggests that. Are you on the same page?
Yes, I think it's bottoming out because you have an increasing number of economies who are just allowing activity to normalize. I think the big question then from here is not so much only at the bottom, but how vigorous is the rebound? And that, to me, is anybody's guess. Essentially, this is going to be a recovery unlike any other recovery because it's stage managed by government restrictions on activity. So even though I think everyone believes growth is going to be better, just because it's been so catastrophic over the past couple of months, it's a huge wild card in terms of actually what the vigor of the upturn is going to be.
What do you think about the market's response so far? It's the stock 600 at least down 35% from April to May, then back up 20% after yesterday's big drops. Does it make sense, or is this just a bear market rally?
I think it makes sense that markets bottomed in March because the drop in markets from their high was in line with what you typically see in a deep recession. Also because the policy stimulus was so extraordinary on the fiscal monetary side and came so much earlier than it ever comes in a recession. That said, I think the extent to which markets have rallied, equities more so than credit, over the past couple of weeks is overly optimistic. They're pricing the recovery and growth as if it's a recovery from a natural disaster. And this is something different from a natural disaster. There's an underlying leverage problem in corporates and households, which has been triggered by the size of the shock, and that's going to take a long time to recover from. And therefore, it should take a longer period for stocks to get back to their highs. Even though I think eventually they will make them highs. So I think the markets have gotten ahead of themselves right here.
Does anything matter, though, in the bond markets as much as the ECB? We've got an Italian credit risk on the horizon in the sense that Moody's does a review on Friday, and that could see potentially Italy downgraded.
Yes, I think the central banks are the main driver here because the size of asset purchases that they're committing to up front, which is what the ECB is doing through this PEP program, or the indefinite size that the Fed is committed to in the bond markets, that is to me sufficient to absorb any increase in supply or any sales by private investors who aren't comfortable with the credit risk of these securities. So it's not to say that these issues around credit quality deterioration are not important eventually. I just think that when the central bank is a large committed buyer, that the volatility is going to be very short-lived.
What do you think about the stimulus to come, John? I mean, can investors bank on more stimulus programs post-crisis? There's been sort of the talk internally of economists, and I wonder if it's actually going to happen.
I've been continuously surprised over the past several weeks by how the approach by almost every government has been a blank check approach. You can usually expect that in the U.S. You can more or less expect that in the UK. We've learned over cycles, but that's something extremely unusual in continental Europe. the continental Europe seems to be following that path as well. So I think it is a sign that there will be more stimulus.
That there will be more stimulus to come. I mean, having said that, Europe already has an infrastructure that is more, accommodating in terms of unemployment, jobless benefits that you get anyway versus the US.
Yes, I think that's what minimizes the hit to unemployment. So you won't have as large a move higher in unemployment in Europe as you have in the US because of that.
All right, John, thanks so much for joining us. John Norman there, head of cross-asset fundamental strategy at JP Morgan Chase. If you stick with us here on, if you're listening on London DAB Digital, for example, you'll hear more from John on Bloomberg Surveillance coming up. If you want to see him on TV, you can just switch on Bloomberg Television because he will be simulcast, of course. If you're listening on Sirius XM, channel 119 in New York, good morning to you. You will hear Daybreak Americas coming up with Nathan Hager and Karen Moscow as we look towards a risk on Tuesday. You know, we had a pretty rough day here in European markets yesterday. We were down 3-4% across the board, with the exception of the FTSE, which put up slight gains. But then the U.S. markets came up and rallied to green arrows. That traveled through the Asian markets that were open, and now we're looking at U.S. futures that are gaining 0.5% across the board. This is Bloomberg.
The market is unpredictable.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Another day inside? I've turned my place into a gymnasium. I'm using the stairs for lunging and the washing machine as a power plate. But if you'd rather shed pounds off your outgoings, take a few minutes to check your bank account for any unwanted direct debits. It's just another small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
Global stocks gain as economies around the world get back to work.
New York and California announce measures to restart their economies.
Oil jumps as U.S. producers announce plans to curb output.
And as states reopen, a government document paints a grim picture on the loss of life that could result.
New Jersey schools will remain closed for the rest of the year. Plus, China pushes back on virus comments made by Secretary of State Pompeo. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. NFL coaching legend Don Shula, the all-time leader in wins, passed away at 90. He won back-to-back Super Bowls with the Dolphins and coached the NFL's only undefeated team.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
And good Tuesday morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures are gaining this morning. We're coming up to 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 10 points this morning. Dow futures up 115. NASDAQ futures up 38. The DAX in Germany is up 0.7%. CAC in Paris up 1.1%. And the FTSE 100 is up 0.8%.
A holiday in Japan today. No trading on the Nikkei. The 10-year Treasury is down 11/32. The yield 0.66%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up 9%, up $1.83 at $22.19 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.3% or $5.60 at $17.0760 an ounce. The euro 1.0848 against the dollar, and the yen is at 106.77. Nathan.
And Karen, we're seeing states across the country opening up. More than 20 have lifted restrictions, and now New York, the epicenter of the outbreak, is laying out plans of its own. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the very latest. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nathan. New York will open in 4 phases. Governor Andrew Cuomo plans to restart business in regions that meet requirements when the stay-at-home order expires.
That expires on May 15th. May 15th, regions can start to reopen and do their own analysis. But these are the facts that they have to have in place to do it.
Areas must have at least 14 days of declining hospitalizations and deaths, plus 30 tests for every 1,000 residents. New infections must be contained to 2 out of every 100,000 people, and hospitals must have 30% of beds available in case of a surge.
This is about government leaders' performance, their expertise. This is a situation where their competence and their ability can be the difference between life and death, literally.
Phase 1 will see manufacturing, construction, and select retailers get back to work. Phase 2 includes professional services, finance, and real estate. The third phase opens up restaurants and hotels, while the arts, entertainment, and schools open up in the final phase. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. California was the first state to shut down. Now, Governor Gavin Newsom is relaxing stay-at-home rules and looking to reopen parts of the state as soon as Friday. Here with details is Ed Baxter from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
The governor says the process will move slowly.
We are entering into the next phase this week, end of the week, with modifications. We will allow retail to start operating across the spectrum.
Newsom says localities will have the final regulations and guidelines and that people will get sick, but that control will be determined by infection testing and trace testing. He says if things go badly, the state will need to be shut down again. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Ed, thanks. Now, as states reopen, an internal government scenario shows the coronavirus outbreak vastly accelerating by June, when we could see 2,500 deaths per day. That's the middle of the range outlined in a document carrying the seal of the Health and Human Services and Homeland Security Departments. It's roughly double the amount of current daily fatalities. Dr. Amesh Ajala is a senior scholar and infectious disease expert at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
As we decrease social distancing, the virus hasn't disappeared, and we're going to get more cases, and we're going to get more deaths. That's a simple fact. Without a vaccine, without a highly effective treatment, deaths are going to continue. And the question has always been, will the hospitalization rate, will the level of people needing hospital-level care, will that exceed hospital capacity? And I think that's the issue that we've been trying to struggle with.
The White House is pushing back against projections in the research. It's calling it an internal CDC document. It says the data doesn't reflect modeling done by the Coronavirus Task Force or reflect any evidence it's analyzed.
As economies around the world reopen, oil prices are recovering. The worst of the supply glut may be over as production cuts start to take effect. Exxon, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips plan to curb as much as 660,000 barrels a day by the end of June. And that is Texas Railroad Commissioner Ryan Sitton calling off a vote today for mandatory cuts.
At this point, it looks like the market is bottoming out. Texas producers are shutting in. So I think, frankly, we have probably missed our opportunity to lead on this. So I think at this point, we are not going to prorate.
And oil is higher for a fifth straight session. Checking prices now. West Texas Intermediate is up 8.4% at $22.10 a barrel. Brent is up 6.5% at $28.98.
Meantime, in France, Total is cutting spending on oil and gas projects. The company is reporting a sharp drop in profit as the pandemic hammers demand. It's also investing more in clean energy, committing to eliminate carbon emissions over the next 30 years. Total is keeping its dividend, and that is sitting well with investors. Shares are up more than 5% in Paris.
BNP Paribas is out with earnings in line with estimates. At the same time, it's warning full-year results will take a hit from the outbreak. The French lender took more than $1 billion in charges and write-downs, including more than $500 million in future bad credit. But it could have been worse, and that has shares up 3% this morning.
United Airlines is cutting at least 30% of its managerial and administrative jobs. The reduction of about 3,500 positions will take effect in October as the company prepares for a prolonged travel slump. In addition, management and administrative employees will be forced to take 20 days off without pay this year. United warns it will not rebound quickly from the coronavirus crisis.
And Neiman Marcus is nearing a bankruptcy plan that could see the company change hands. Sources tell us the department store is closing in on a deal with PIMCO and other lenders that would give the group control of the company. In exchange, the deal would cut Neiman's debt in half while the company restructures in Chapter 11. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It's 5:07 on Wall Street. Now let's see what else is going on around the world, courtesy of Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New Jersey schools will remain closed through the academic year's end in June. That means about 1.4 million K through 12th grade students will continue electronic classes. Governor Phil Murphy says the logistical hurdles to reopen schools could not be overcome.
The reality is that we cannot safely reopen our schools to provide students and families or faculty and staff the confidence needed to allow for a return to in-person instruction.
Murphy also says while New Jersey has shown a flattening trend of COVID-19 cases, a 14-day decline is necessary before the state reopens non-essential businesses, workplaces, and government services. Murphy says ventilator use is the lowest in more than a month, and the number of patients in critical or intensive care has decreased for 6 straight days. It's another sign of the toll that the outbreak has taken on frontline delivery workers. Several FedEx workers at the company's Newark Air Hub have died due to complications of the coronavirus. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says the city will distribute 7.5 million free face masks to residents. De Blasio says a summertime coronavirus plan is coming soon.
Beaches that are not open still require enforcement, clearly. So those parameters will be put out, and then we'll watch to see how things evolve, to see if we can do something different as we go along, as things get better.
De Blasio also promises a 4th of July celebration involving fireworks. Chinese state media unleashed a torrent of criticism against Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, calling him evil and a liar, as Beijing sought to push back against the U.S.'s virus allegations. State media published a series of commentaries lashing out at Pompeo after he said there was enormous evidence that the coronavirus outbreak sprung from a high-security lab in Wuhan. Senators returned to the Capitol since their last formal gathering in March. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
For more than a month, we were among the many Americans who have found creative ways to telework and continue doing our jobs remotely. But now the time has come for us to continue conducting our nation's business in ways that are only possible with senators here in the Capitol.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. 5:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashower.
All right, good morning, Nathan. Don Shula won 347 NFL games, most for any coach in the 100-year history of the league. He coached for 33 seasons, first in Baltimore, then Miami. Only twice did he have a losing record. A true coaching legend. Shula passed away yesterday at the age of 90. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Dolphins, including the 1972 team that went undefeated. He was asked about the NFL's only perfect team in a recent interview with the Miami Herald.
Because of the fact that you're the only one and we were the only team, it just makes it that much more important. It gives you that much more pride in the accomplishment. Until somebody duplicates it, then we're going to just take a lot of pride.
As good as that 72 Dolphins team was, the 68 Colts that Shula coached may be better, and that's why they were an 18-point favorite to beat the Jets in Super Bowl III. But, of course, Joe Namath guaranteed the upset, and did just that. Shula lost the Super Bowl 3 other times with Miami. Will his record for most wins ever be broken? Bill Belichick, who's older now than Shula was when he retired, is at 273, would need 75 to break the record. NFL schedule will come out Thursday night. There'll be no international games due to the virus. There were going to be 4 in London, 1 in Mexico City. There's going to be some golf on NBC May 17th, a Skins game. Goes to COVID charity. Rory McIlroy involved, so will Ricky Fowler and Dustin Johnson. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
And John, the New York Giants are deferring the next payment for their season ticket holders till July 1st. It's the second time this year they've done that due to the coronavirus pandemic. The Giants have several options for season ticket payments, including a 4-month plan, a 6-month plan, and a 1-payment deal. Futures moving higher this morning. S&P futures up 17 points. Dow futures up 165. NASDAQ futures gaining 56 points. This is Bloomberg.
Debbie Hart is president of BioNJ, which represents the interests of more than 400 New Jersey-based biotech companies. She's also a strong voice in the biotech sector, supporting research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology. She sees NJIT as a valuable partner in attracting venture capital and biotech startups to the Garden State.
So the number one reason that companies come here to New Jersey for the biotech industry is for our talent. We estimate that there were about 30 biotech companies in the early 90s in New Jersey, about 80 in 1998. Today there are more than 400. And that growth continues, and it's come from every possible angle. Other countries, other states, they've spun out of our academic institutions as well as our biotech and our pharma companies, and we expect that growth to continue long into the future. And NJIT is a pipeline for talent, for companies, for entrepreneurs to do that important work.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize...
Prince of Darkness here.
Let's rock and roll. Blaze is taking British rock legend Ozzy Osbourne and his son Jack on a road trip of the USA.
What?
It's him and I, the open road, father and son, in an RV. Ready?
I'm ready. I feel like the king. It's what you call touring, son.
Ozzy and Jack's American road trip, tonight at 9 on Blaze. Take it on. Freeview Channel 63.
The trampoline that makes Dad feel like a kid again. The projector that turns film night into outdoor cinema night. The hot tub that transforms your garden into a spa retreat. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Here's Emily Chang.
Work.com is Salesforce's latest effort to provide companies with a suite of tools to help them assess employee readiness and get back to work quickly. I spoke earlier with Salesforce Chair and CEO Mark Benioff about how it all works. What is your outlook on how long the economic downturn lasts, and what does that mean for Salesforce? How long do you believe this contraction will go on?
This is my first pandemic. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure this out as I go. I didn't know what PPE was 90 days ago. Now, we've done everything we can to make sure that our hospitals are well equipped. And that's also why we built this suite of software, because we believe that this is important going forward. It's why we're going to have a chief health officer at Salesforce for the first time, because I don't know how we can manage a large corporation around the world without it. When we look at the economic environment, are we in a recessionary environment? Are we in a depressionary environment? We know we're going to be in one of the most severe economic environments that we've ever been in as a company. And we're taking actions now to make sure that we can be successful, but also that our customers can also be successful in an environment like this.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European and Asian stocks are rising alongside U.S. stock index futures, with sentiment lifted as more economies move toward easing their coronavirus lockdowns. Oil is gaining for a fifth day, on course for its longest winning streak in 9 months. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 22 points. Dow futures up 191. NASDAQ futures up 67. The DAX in Germany's up 1.4%. 10-year Treasury down 11/30 seconds. Yield 0.66%. Yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up 9.2%, up $1.87 at $22.26 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.3%, or $5.10 at $17.0820 an ounce. The euro 1.0834 against the dollar. British pound 1.2436, and the yen is at 106.83. And Disney among companies scheduled to report earnings today. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. We're seeing states across the country opening up. It comes as New York, the state with the most coronavirus cases, is laying out plans of its own. Bloomberg's John Tucker in New York joins us live for the very latest.
And Michael, New York making plans for reopening as the number of hospitalizations and new cases continue to decline. Regions that meet a long list of requirements can start opening beginning May 15th. Construction, manufacturing, and select retail businesses will be part of the first phase of reopenings, with schools and entertainment last. New Jersey schools, public and private, will remain closed through the academic year's end in June. And California will start loosening its lockdown on Friday. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
John, thank you, sir. Former Buffalo Bills coach Marv Levy, as a longtime rival of Don Shula, says the late Miami Dolphins coach was one of the great credits to the game that has ever been. Shula died yesterday at age 90. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. It is 5:19 on Wall Street. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak. Marvin Lowe is with us now, global macro strategist at State Street. Certainly seeing a risk-on feel to the market this morning as we're hearing those signals from states announcing their plans to reopen their economies. Are the states sending the right signal here, and are the markets getting it right, do you think, Marvin?
Well, I mean, each state is individual. We ultimately have to remember that. I personally feel that it's a slow, iterative process. It's part of the experiment. Ultimately, we're all part of the social experiment at this point, and we're going to have data coming out within the next couple of months as to how quickly businesses can get up and running and how much damage we're ultimately going to have. I think the markets, particularly the equity markets, which of course is what people look at as a risk barometer, are taking a pretty positive, optimistic view. I hope they're right, but the devil's in the detail coming up.
Yeah, and I guess one of those details that at least we're hearing now is this internal document from the U.S. government warning potentially of a much bigger surge than the White House has been willing to acknowledge. Is that something that the markets need to acknowledge here?
You know, given the messaging that we're getting out of companies, which is not necessarily that they're falling off the cliff, but they just don't know how far the cliff is. I think caution is a good operative position to have, particularly how aggressively we've traded valuations up over the last couple of weeks, or month and a half, let's say.
Yeah. So where do you point to when it comes to a cautionary stance in investment? What are you advising your clients?
Yeah, it definitely is a challenge. I do think that cash flow is incredibly important. I think we've seen a little some of that rotation, particularly with the cash-rich tech shares. If those valuations still make sense for you kind of a few years down the line, I think that their prominence continues out there. I think there are Fed programs that are out there that are going to support different parts of the market also. Interest rates are going to remain low in my mind. So finding income support is part of that discussion. And, I've never been a massive gold bug, but, certainly having something like that as part of your portfolio, the challenge is that, I would never say go 100% into anything, certainly fits with gold also. But, having that as part of your allocation seems to make sense in here.
Now, with interest rates as low as they are right now, does it make sense for more companies to take on the kind of debt that they are and to adjust their balance sheets to take on more debt?
You know what? Yeah, absolutely. If they believe that they need the buffer to get them through what's probably going to be a bit of a rocky restart, and the debt markets are open, and the ultimate rate makes sense for them, yes. But as a bond holder, make sure that that business model makes sense given increased debt. I think one of the challenges I have is that debt is not necessarily going out for CapEx at this point, which is kind of what you need for a good restart of the economy. It's just a matter of survival, and that doesn't necessarily generate kind of a big bounce in growth, which to me valuations are somewhat building in as we go into or look into the middle of 2021.
Now, when it comes to mapping out the shape of the recovery here, what kind of impact could these ramped up tensions that we're starting to see between the U.S. and China have on the shape of the recovery heading into 21?
Certainly another risk, right? one that we really don't need at this point. To me, it makes no sense to go down this route given how fragile everything is. However, politics sometimes doesn't make the most sense, and the fact that we're raising, we're rattling that saber again is just another risk in the market. Certainly. It's been able to ignore it at this point, so maybe it's more bluster. But if it does kind of come to fruition, I think it's just another risk in the market.
Only about 30 seconds left here, Marvin. Do you see a chance for a solid recovery in the second half of this year?
You know what? I would be pretty happy if we hold on to our gains, kind of going into the end of the year. I think that the real data as it comes out is, something that the market will have to digest and really have something more solid to grab onto right now. Right now, the numbers don't make much sense, and we're all willing to look past it. But we're getting to a point fairly soon with the reopenings when we'll have numbers to actually, sink our teeth into.
All right. Much appreciated, Marvin. Thanks for being with us this morning. Marvin Lowe, global macro strategist at State Street. And looking at markets this morning, risk on, possibility for a turnaround Tuesday here, perhaps, with S&P futures higher by 17 points. Dow futures up 159. And NASDAQ futures a gain of 57 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The early market indicators are pointing to a move higher at the open as more economies move toward easing coronavirus-related lockdowns. Stocks kicked off the week on a positive note with a rally late in the session to close higher after California sounded a note of optimism in its fight against the virus. Energy, IT, and utilities led the gains, and the NASDAQ was up almost 1.25%. The Dow was up 26 points, and the S&P 500 added 12, or 0.4%. Today we get an update on the wide-ranging services sector for April. It's expected expected to show a significant downturn amid coronavirus-related shutdowns. We get another round of earnings today, including those from U.S. Foods, Aramark, Mattel, Disney, and Planet Fitness. Shares of Hertz are plummeting before the open. The company has hired a firm that specializes in restructuring and bankruptcy cases. The car rental company was preparing for a Chapter 11 filing soon if it could not rework its debt and get lenders to extend a grace period on a missed payment. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
What's the true value of your custodial?
Did you know that players of People's Postcode Lottery have raised over £500 million for charities and good causes? They've also won £63 million in prizes so far this year, and it could be your postcode next. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 21st of May to play in the June draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus. Conditions apply. Play responsibly.
The loungewear essentials that ease you into your comfort zone. The Fitbit that helps you step up your fitness goals. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can enjoy being the best possible you. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
When next in Asda, why not try our new mobile Scan and Go app? Simply download the app, scan your shop with your mobile, and pack as you go. Then head to the self-checkout to pay. Quick, easy, and contact-free, so you have more time to get your cook on. Asda. Mobile data charges may apply. Suitable for iOS 9 and Android 5 or above. Selected stores subject to availability.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Learn why the world's most sophisticated advisory firms and broker-dealers rely on Pershing to help them improve profitability, create efficiency, attract talent, and manage risk at Pershing.com.
And we're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are gaining as states across the country open up. More than 20 have lifted restrictions, and now New York is preparing to do the same. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the very latest. Good morning, John.
And Karen, New York will open in 4 phases on a region-by-region basis. To do so, areas must have had at least 14 days of declining hospitalizations and deaths, plus 30 tests for every 1,000 residents, and new infections contained to 2 out of every 100,000 people. Phase 1 will see manufacturing, construction, and select retailers get back to work. Phase 2 includes professional services, finance, and real estate. The third phase opens up restaurants and hotels, while entertainment and schools open last. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
And John, thanks. California starts loosening its lockdown Friday, as Governor Gavin Newsom says the outbreak has hit a turning point.
This is a very positive sign, and it's happened only for one reason. The data says it can happen.
The first phase allows retailers to sell items via curbside pickup, and individual counties could further relax rules if they can effectively track and trace infections.
As economies around the world reopen, oil prices are recovering. Production cuts are starting to take effect, with Exxon, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips planning curbs as high as 660,000 barrels a day. Checking prices now, West Texas Intermediate up 8.8% at $22.19 a barrel. Brent is up 6.6% at $29 a barrel.
Meantime, in France, Total is cutting spending on oil and gas projects. The company's reporting a sharp drop in profit, but is keeping its dividend. That's sitting well with investors. Shares are up 5.8% in Paris.
And coming up, we get earnings from Walt Disney, where profit likely took a big hit from the pandemic. And here with more is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
With Mickey and Minnie in quarantine like the rest of us, Disney's theme parks have been hit hardest. Theater closures have hurt Disney's film studio, and the absence of live sports has sent its TV networks, especially ESPN, reeling. Streaming is the only saving grace, pushing Disney Plus above 50 million subscribers. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Larry, thank you. S&P futures up 17 points. Dow futures up 166 and NASDAQ futures up 58. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
Thanks, Karen. 5:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New Jersey schools will stay closed for the rest of the academic year due to the coronavirus pandemic. Governor Phil Murphy says online instruction will continue.
We reached this conclusion based on the guidance from our public health experts and with a single goal in mind: the safety and well-being of our children and of our educators, administrators, and staff.
Murphy signed the executive order to close schools on March 16th. Murphy also says while New Jersey has shown a flattening trend of COVID-19 cases, a 14-day decline is necessary before the state reopens non-essential businesses, workplaces, and government services. Murphy says ventilator use is the lowest in more than a month, and the number of patients in critical or intensive care has decreased for 6 straight days. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says a summertime coronavirus plan is coming. De Blasio vowed enforcement at city beaches, which won't be open. He also makes a promise.
There will be a celebration of the 4th of July, and fireworks will play a role, but how and where and in what fashion, what it means for people's ability to watch it, what the conditions will be, that's still far in the future, literally.
The White House moved to limit the number of task force members allowed to testify before Congress. It comes after blocking Dr. Anthony Fauci, a White House coronavirus task force member, from testifying before a House subcommittee. Democratic Congresswoman Donna Shalala of Florida says the Trump administration shouldn't muzzle scientists.
They've muzzled lots of people in the government, including firing the IG at HHS, who put out a report that was so even-handed. They literally must not have read it. And the idea of firing someone who has oversight is really outrageous.
Shalala was the Health and Human Services Secretary under President Clinton. Chinese state media unleashed a torrent of criticism against Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, calling him evil and a liar. State media published commentaries lashing out at Pompeo after he said there was enormous evidence that the coronavirus outbreak sprung from a high-security lab in Wuhan. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thanks. It's 5:35 on Wall Street and time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, Don Shula, the Dolphins coaching legend who passed away yesterday at the age of 90, had a huge impact on not only the NFL, but Miami, a city that had little to no history of sports. When Shula arrived in 1970, the Dolphins were the only pro team there, and they had never won anything. By 72, they were Super Bowl champs with a team that is still the only one to go through a season with a perfect record. Shula won 347 games in 33 years, most for any NFL coach.
People ask me how I coached as long as I coached, 33 years. And I said, you got to win early and often. And then you've got a chance to stay around.
How big a deal was Shula in Miami? One of the city's main arteries is the Don Shula Expressway. The NFL 2020 schedule will be announced Thursday. Other than the fact they're not going to play any of the international games they had planned to have 4 in London, 1 in Mexico City, they are treating the schedule as if there'll be no delays or changes due to the virus. The Devils are the first NHL team to announce a plan for ticket holders who have missed games this season. They'll have an option of a refund, a credit towards next year, or the chance to donate future tickets to frontline coronavirus workers. The NCAA has announced a notice of allegations at Louisville, including recruiting violations involving former basketball coach Rick Pitino. Iona recently hired Pitino. Remains to be seen whether the Hall of Fame coach will have to serve a suspension. May 5th, this date in sports history, 1973, the great Secretariat won the Kentucky Derby with a record time. Still the record. In fact, Secretariat still holds the fastest times for all 3 Triple Crown races. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
Thank you, John. 5:37 on Wall Street. Time for the Tri-State Business Report. Here's Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
One of the world's most famed restaurants might stay closed. The future of 11 Madison Park in New York, named the #1 restaurant in the world in 2017, is uncertain, according to chef and owner Daniel Hum. He tells Bloomberg it'll take millions of dollars to reopen the eatery. Several FedEx workers at the company's Newark Air Hub have died from complications of COVID-19. The outbreak among FedEx workers has prompted questions from New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. He wrote to FedEx chairman and CEO Fred Smith about safety protocols at the delivery giant. The mayor of Milford, Connecticut, has issued an emergency order. It limits use of recreational areas to city residents only. It includes community gardens, the Milford Skate Park, tennis courts, pickleball courts, Walnut Beach, Gulf Beach, Anchor Beach, and Hawley Avenue Beach. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
All right, Ed, thanks. It's 5:38 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and for WBBM in Chicago, I'm talking about United Airlines cutting at least 3,500 jobs.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WTVN in Columbus, I'm reporting Sycamore Partners' planned acquisition of Victoria's Secret has fallen through.
I'm Roger Hearing. On Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London, we're reporting on the Chancellor saying there will not be a cliff edge for people receiving government furlough payouts.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KRLD in Dallas. JCPenney is suing to block Sephora from closing in-store boutiques.
I'm Steve Podoskan on 1010 Wins. In New York, we're talking about Shake Shack as it struggles with surging beef prices.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting European car makers are calling for a cash for clunkers type program.
Those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. It's 5:39 on Wall Street. The latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is online now with a cover on Exxon's fall from oil juggernaut to mediocre. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go. Listen to Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio, or watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device. Just visit youtube.com and search Bloomberg Global News. Now, some other stories we're following this morning. Neiman Marcus is nearing a bankruptcy plan that could see the company change hands. Sources tell us the department store is closing in on a deal with PIMCO and other lenders that would give the group control of the company. In exchange, the deal would cut Neiman's debt in half while the company restructures under Chapter 11. Hertz is preparing to file for bankruptcy. That's if the rental car company fails to rework its debt and can't get lenders to extend a grace period. A Chapter 11 filing would let Hertz stay in business while working out a payment plan. Travel restrictions have killed off much of that company's business. Futures are moving higher this morning. S&P futures up 19 points. Dow futures up 183. NASDAQ futures a gain of 63 points. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all. Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate. The football boots that will help her score her first hat-trick. The tech that keeps you connected. The cozy jumpers that are perfect for snuggling up together. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
If you're buying anything online, take care and don't pay by money transfer. Always pay by card. Take time to check the seller is genuine, and if you're unsure, then stop and don't send any money.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Be part of the sports conversation with Sports Talk Radio on TuneIn. Join the discussion around your favorite local teams with sports stations broadcasting in your area.
The game will be 185 to 183 and somebody wins, whatever. Football, it's either full go or it's not. You got like, oh, it's thud. I can practice what they call
Follow national storylines and debates with ESPN Radio.
Does the NBA have a hiring problem when it comes to front office jobs in the leagues and a minority hiring issue? Stephen A. chimed in on that today on First Take.
It also resonates with me, Max. You can appreciate this position. One of the candidates was Brian Colangelo. We know what happened. I like Brian, but we know.
And hear what's happening worldwide with international channels like Talk Sport.
Seems as I'm sort of doing my life in reverse at the moment. I was on cricket tours when I was 20 years old, and now I'm 31. I'm out sat at home, injured playing PlayStation. So it's a tournament basically where you create your own character.
In your backyard and around the globe. Keep your finger on the pulse of the sports world with TuneIn.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
While he was gone, Al had some kind of vote to make him the managing. You remember he used to come up all the time in the Raiders game that he was the managing general partner. By the way, don't forget, there was a lot going on in Munich. But you know how tired that man was to come back and find out that Al Davis had strong-armed his team from him while he was gone?
Search The Right Time with Bomani Jones to listen.
The TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, coronavirus update. The U.S. Senate has reopened.
For more than a month, we were among the many Americans who have found creative ways to telework and continue doing our jobs remotely. But now the time has come for us to continue conducting our nation's business in ways that are only possible with senators here in the Capitol.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, also from the Senate floor, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Months ago, in early March, here's what President Trump said, quote, "Anybody who needs a test gets a test." It was a lie then. It remains a lie now.
The White House is blocking members of its coronavirus task force from testifying on Capitol Hill. The move follows a White House decision to block Dr. Anthony Fauci from testifying before a House panel while allowing him to appear at a Senate hearing. I'm John Trout.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
Is that good for American finance? What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European and Asian stocks are rising alongside U.S. stock index futures, with sentiment lifted as more economies move toward easing their coronavirus lockdowns. Oil is gaining for a fifth day, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 22 points, Dow futures up 197, NASDAQ futures up 72, and the DAX in Germany's up 1.4%. 10-year Treasury down 12/30 seconds, yield 0.67%. Yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up 10%, or $2.03 at $22.42 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.6%, or $9.40 at $17.04 an ounce. The euro 1.0839 against the dollar, British pound 1.2439, and the yen 106.87. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, a White House memo to congressional committees says no member of the Trump administration's coronavirus task force may agree to testify on Capitol Hill unless the appearance is expressly approved by the president's chief of staff. Democrats are bristling at the restriction on gathering information about the nation's response to the pandemic. The memo follows a White House move to block Dr. Anthony Fauci from testifying before a House panel. A generic pill used to treat ulcers, acid reflux, and heartburn has been added to the FDA's list of drug shortages just over a week after a report that famotidine was being tested in high doses as a potential treatment for COVID-19 patients. A Senate panel is set to consider Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe's nomination to be Director of National Intelligence. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
All right, Michael, thank you. It is 5:49 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm John Tucker. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. In the wake of the pandemic, antibody testing has been trumpeted as a potential game changer to reopen economies and lift lockdowns around the world. But do the tests work? Stephanie Baker in London has written a piece about this for Bloomberg Business Week. First off, are you okay?
I'm absolutely fine. And like I said, I suspected that I might have picked up COVID-19 in February on a ski trip. I had symptoms not long after I returned, and they were not severe, and I recovered fairly quickly, but the suspicion that I might have had it lingered. So when these antibody tests were being talked about, I was really eager to find out and plunge myself into this world to see if some of the criticism of these tests were valid, that they were unreliable. And indeed, I found out they were unreliable and gave me conflicting results.
So how many, and this was in the interest of not just your health, your family's health, but also a journalistic endeavor, I suppose. How many tests did you have? And kind of give us the distinction between the types of tests.
Well, I did it as a journalistic endeavor. I was confident that, I was fine and I would continue to follow social distancing guidelines. But I had 4 tests by 4 different companies, and these are all these rapid test kits that can give you results in as little as 10 minutes. And they work by taking a finger prick blood sample. You drop it on a little cassette, you put a little buffer agent, and you get a control line that says the test is working, or 2 additional lines that show that you have antibodies. So my first test was negative, and I was a bit crestfallen. The following
why? Well, let me interject here. Why?
Well, I thought, I had flu-like, COVID-like symptoms in February. I thought I'd rather just have it and get it over with. Okay. To think that I'd been there, done that. The following 2 tests I took were positive, and then the 4th test was negative. So I didn't even have a preponderance of evidence in one direction or the other, which left me completely in a state of doubt as to whether or not I did indeed have it.
Now, from your reporting, can we ascertain if there is one test that's better than another? And I guess I also should ask which of these is government approved, either by the FDA or any other international regulatory body?
I did not take any of the tests that the Food and Drug Administration has given emergency use authorization to a little bit less than a dozen of these tests. I did not take any of those. However, the FDA is allowing some of the tests, including 2 of the ones I took, to be marketed and distributed in the U.S. They're not objecting to those being distributed as long as the companies write to the FDA and notify them and give them some data to back it up, but the FDA does not review them. I think the issue that I discovered with these tests is some of them are targeting different parts of the virus, and I think that is one of the reasons why I got varying results. Some target just the spike protein, which is the hallmark of this virus. Others target another protein called the nucleocapsid. Some target both of those. And so there's no consistency in terms of how they target them. I think Roche Holdings came out with a test that was FDA authorized, and they only target the nucleocapsid protein of the virus. And they're not doing this finger prick blood sample, but they're doing an intravenous blood draw, which they say gives more reliable results. This is an evolving area. I think that there have been critics saying the FDA should be doing more to police these tests. They shouldn't let some of these companies market them without really reviewing them more rigorously.
What's for the government officials here in the United States? I mean, we carry every day Governor Cuomo, Governor Murphy in New Jersey, their press conferences. In 20 seconds or less, what should be their takeaway?
Well, I think there should be more studies of antibodies in the population using, more reliable tests, perhaps the Roche test, if it does indeed prove to be more reliable. But I think the issue is they need to look at whether or not these antibodies last and do they provide protection.
Steph, thanks very much. Stay safe. Bloomberg's Stephanie Baker joining us from London. Thank you very much. Karen.
All right, John Tucker, thank you. It is 5:54 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. It's brought to you by American Arbitration Association. International trade or business dispute resolved faster with the International Center for Dispute Resolution, the leader in alternative dispute resolution around the world, ICDR.org. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
In its first ever remote oral argument, the Supreme Court took up the question of whether generic terms can be trademarked. The specific case involves Booking.com. An Internal Revenue Service campus in Kansas City, Missouri is closed for a deep cleaning after a worker tested positive for COVID-19. Securities and Exchange Commission Chairman Jay Clayton says workforce and supply chain disclosures will be critical for investors as companies prepare to get back to work.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching. It was two firsts for the Supreme Court yesterday. The first arguments by telephone and the first arguments streaming live via C-SPAN. The case argued will determine whether businesses can get federal trademark protection for website names such as Booking.com that center on a commonly used word. Bloomberg's June Grasso brings us more on the unprecedented argument session in this report.
We'll hear argument this morning in case 1946, United States Patent and Trademark Office versus Booking.com.
Chief Justice John Roberts started the session as usual by announcing the case, but then rolled out a new format, calling on the justices by seniority in an orderly fashion, unlike the usual free-for-all.
Justice Breyer?
Same question. Justice Thomas's question.
There were just a few glitches. Justice Stephen Breyer's audio at one point was garbled, and Justice Sonia Sotomayor seemed to forget her mute button was on.
Justice Sotomayor? Justice Sotomayor?
I'm sorry, Chief. Ms. Ross, picking up on where you were right now.
The one surprise, Justice Clarence Thomas asked a question for the first time in more than a year.
Justice Thomas?
Yes, Ms. Ross, a couple of questions. Could Booking acquire an 800 number, that's a vanity number, 1-800-Booking, for example, that is similar to, for 1-800-Plumbing, which is a registered mark?
Even though the chief tried to keep the questioning on time.
Thank you, Ms. Blatt. Justice Ginsburg?
The argument ran 15 minutes past the normal hour-long session. That's Bloomberg's June Grasso reporting. Thank you, June. Catch more on yesterday's Supreme Court session, plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcast. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. Futures are higher this morning. S&P futures are up 24 points. Dow futures up 210 and NASDAQ futures up 81. The DAX in Germany is up 1.5%. 10-year Treasury down 12/30 seconds, yield 0.67%. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip 3, have a game night. In fact, why not make it a game day? Whether you're quarantined with kids or roommates, nothing passes the time like a game of cards, Pictionary, charades, dominoes, or Never Have I Ever. If you've got the hardware, break out the video game console and enjoy hours of guilt-free gaming. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen From Home on TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
on the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
4 hour hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
Global stocks gain as economies around the world get back to work.
New York and California announce measures to restart their economies.
Oil jumps as U.S. producers announce plans to curb output.
And as states reopen, a government document paints a grim picture on the loss of life that could result.
New Jersey schools will remain closed for the rest of the year. Plus, China pushes back on virus comments made by Secretary of State Pompeo. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. NFL coaching legend Don Shula, the all-time leader in wins, passed away at 90. He won back-to-back Super Bowls with the Dolphins and coached the NFL's only undefeated team.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures are gaining this morning. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 28 points this morning. Dow futures up 238, and NASDAQ futures up 89. The DAX in Germany's up 1.7%. The CAC in Paris up 1.8%, and the FTSE 100 is up 1.3%. No trading in Japan today due to a holiday. 10-year Treasury down 12/30 seconds, yield 0.67%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up 9.5%, up $1.97 at $22.36 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.5% or $9 at $17.0430 an ounce. The euro 1.0847 against the dollar. The yen is at 106.86. Nathan.
And Karen, we are seeing states across the country begin to open up. More than 20 have lifted restrictions. Now New York, the epicenter of the outbreak, is laying out plans of its own. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the very latest. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nathan. New York will open in 4 phases. Governor Andrew Cuomo plans to restart business in regions that meet requirements when the stay-at-home order expires.
That expires on May 15th. May 15th, regions can start to reopen and do their own analysis. But these are the facts that they have to have in place to do it.
Areas must have at least 14 days of declining hospitalizations and deaths, plus 30 tests for every 1,000 residents. And new infections must be contained to 2 out of every 100,000 people, and hospitals must have 30% of beds available in case of a surge.
This is about government leaders' performance, their expertise. This is a situation where their competence and their ability can be the difference between life and death, literally.
Phase 1 will see manufacturing, construction, and select retailers get back to work. Phase 2 includes professional services, finance, and real estate. The third phase opens up restaurants and hotels, while the arts, entertainment, and schools open up in the final phase. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. California was the first state to shut down. Now Governor Gavin Newsom is relaxing stay-at-home rules and looking to reopen parts of the state as soon as Friday. Here with the details is Ed Baxter from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
The governor says the process will move slowly.
We are entering into the next phase this week, end of the week, with modifications. We will allow retail to start operating across the spectrum.
Newsom says localities will have the final regulations and guidelines and that people will get sick, but that control will be determined by infection testing and trace testing. He says if things go badly, the state will need to be shut down again. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
100 deaths per day. That's the middle of the range outlined in a document carrying the seal of the Health and Human Services and Homeland Security Departments. It is roughly double the amount of current daily fatalities. Dr. Arnesh Jala is senior scholar and infectious disease expert at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
as we decrease social distancing, the virus hasn't disappeared, and we're going to get more cases, and we're going to get more deaths. That's a simple fact. Without a vaccine, without a highly effective treatment, deaths are going to continue. And the question has always been, will the hospitalization rate, will the level of people needing hospital-level care, will that exceed hospital capacity? And I think that's the issue that we've been trying to struggle with.
Now, the White House is pushing back against projections in the research, which it calls an internal CDC document. It says the data is not reflective of modeling done by the Coronavirus Task Force or reflective of any evidence it's analyzed.
As economies around the world reopen, oil prices are recovering. The worst of the supply glut may be over as production cuts start to take effect. Exxon, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips plan to curb as much as 660,000 barrels a day by the end of June. And that has Texas Railroad Commissioner Ryan Sitton calling off a vote today for mandatory cuts.
At this point, it looks like the market is bottoming out. Texas producers are shutting in. So I think, frankly, we have probably missed our opportunity to lead on this. So I think at this point, we are not going to prorate.
Oil is higher for a fifth straight session. Checking prices now. West Texas Intermediate up 10% at $22.43 a barrel. And Brent is up 7.9% at $29.33.
Meantime, in France, Total is cutting spending on oil and gas projects. The company is reporting a sharp drop in profit as the pandemic hammers demand. It's also investing more in clean energy, committing to eliminate carbon emissions over the next 30 years. Total is keeping its dividend, and that is sitting well with investors. Right now, shares are higher by 6% in Paris.
BNP Paribas out with earnings in line with estimates. At the same time, it's warning full-year results will take a hit from the outbreak. The French lender took more than $1 billion in charges and write-downs, including more than $500 million for future bad credit. But it could have been worse, and that has shares up 2% this morning.
United Air is... Let me update my screen here. United Air is cutting at least 30% of its managerial and administrative jobs. The reduction of about 3,500 positions is going to take effect in October as the company prepares for a prolonged travel slump. In addition, management and administrative employees will be forced to take 20 days off without pay this year. United is warning it will not rebound quickly from the coronavirus crisis.
And even Marcus nearing a bankruptcy plan that could see the company change hands. Sources tell us the department store is closing in on a deal with PIMCO and other lenders that would give the group control of the company. In exchange, the deal would cut Neiman's debt in half while the company restructures in Chapter 11. And this is Bloomberg.
Okay, Karen, thank you. It is 6:07 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is here with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New Jersey schools will remain closed through the academic year's end in June. That means about 1.4 million K through 12th grade students will continue electronic classes. Governor Phil Murphy says the logistical hurdles to reopen schools could not be overcome.
The reality is that we cannot safely reopen our schools to provide students and families or faculty and staff the confidence needed to allow for a return to in-person instruction.
Murphy also says while New Jersey has shown a flattening trend of COVID-19 cases, a 14-day decline is necessary before the state reopens non-essential businesses, workplaces, and government services. Murphy says ventilator use is the lowest in more than a month, and the number of patients in critical or intensive care has decreased for 6 straight days. It's another sign of the toll that the outbreak has taken on frontline delivery workers. Several FedEx workers at the company's Newark Air Hub have died due to complications of the coronavirus. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says the city will distribute 7.5 million free face masks to residents. De Blasio says a summertime coronavirus plan is coming soon.
Beaches that are not open still require enforcement, clearly. So those parameters will be put out, and then we'll watch to see how things evolve, to see if we can do something different as we go along, as things get better.
De Blasio also promises a 4th of July celebration involving fireworks. Chinese state media unleashed a torrent of criticism against Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, calling him evil and a liar, as Beijing sought to push back against the U.S.'s virus allegations. State media published a series of commentaries lashing out at Pompeo after he said there was enormous evidence that the coronavirus outbreak sprung from a high-security lab in Wuhan. Senators returned to the Capitol since their last formal gathering in March. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
For more than a month, we were among the many Americans who have found creative ways to telework and continue doing our jobs remotely. But now the time has come for us to continue conducting our nation's business in ways that are only possible with senators here in the Capitol.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thanks. 6:09 on Wall Street, and time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
All right, Nathan, Don Shula won 347 NFL games, most for any coach in the 100-year history of the league. He coached for 33 seasons, first in Baltimore, then Miami, and only twice did he have a losing record. True coaching legend. Shula passed away yesterday at the age of 90. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Dolphins, including the 1972 team that went undefeated. He was asked about the NFL's still only perfect team in a recent interview with the Miami Herald.
Because of the fact that you're the only one and we were the only team, it just makes it that much more important. It gives you that much more pride in the accomplishment. And until somebody duplicates it, then we're going to just take a lot of pride.
As good as that 72 Dolphins team was, Shula's 68 Colts were maybe better, and that's why they were an 18-point favorite to beat the Jets in Super Bowl III. But, of course, Joe Namath guaranteed the upset and did just that. Will his record for most wins ever be broken? Bill Belichick, who is older now than Shula was when he retired, is at 273, would need 75 more wins. Alex Morgan and Morgan Rapinoe, the co-captains of the U.S. women's national soccer team, are vowing to appeal their recent defeat in court. A district judge tossed out their $66 million lawsuit seeking equal pay. The judge ruled the women make as much as the men, but Rapinoe pointed out that's because they're so much more successful than the men's team. They end up playing far more games. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
All right, John, thanks. And the New York Giants are deferring the next payment for their season ticket holders until July 1st. It's the second time this year the team's done that amid the coronavirus pandemic. Giants do have several options for season ticket payments. They include a 4-month plan, a 6-month plan, and a 1-payment deal. S&P futures higher by 28 points. Dow futures up 256. NASDAQ futures a gain of 97 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for
Somebody has a stroke every 5 minutes in the UK. With time, though, courage, and the right support, lives can be rebuilt. Mine was. But with this current crisis, I can't imagine how much harder it must be for the stroke survivor and their family, more isolated and alone than ever. The Stroke Association is working tirelessly to support the NHS and develop new ways to rebuild lives. To find out more or to donate, Search Stroke Association now.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the Uswitch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the Coronavirus Job Retention and Self-Employment Income Support Schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
When next in Asda, why not try our new mobile Scan and Go app? Simply download the app, scan your shop with your mobile, and pack as you go. Then head to the self-checkout to pay. Quick, easy, and contact-free, so you have more time to get your cook on. Asda. Mobile data charges may apply. Suitable for iOS 9 and Android 5 or above. Selected stores subject to availability.
Bloomberg Television. Here's Emily Chang.
Parts of Europe and parts of the U.S. are starting to ease their social distancing measures. But the question remains, just how bad will the economic fallout be and how long does the economic recession go on for? Joining me now, Eric Hippo, managing partner at Lehrer Hippo. What do you think the tech ecosystem actually looks like at the end of this?
The tech ecosystem is what really is allowing us to work and live through this entire epidemic. Without technology the way it is today, we wouldn't have home deliveries, we wouldn't have telemedicine, we wouldn't be able to work at home. Even 10 years ago, none of these things would be very, very easy. We wouldn't have the broadband and not only the penetration, but the speeds that we have today, let alone the ability to exercise at home, and of course you can't lock people into their homes without entertainment. So we have all forms of entertainment. So all of that is a momentum that is carrying us through the COVID-19 epidemic, and that will hopefully be part of our lives as we emerge through this, and will in some ways drive the economy of tomorrow.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and we are watching some earnings crossing the Bloomberg, with DuPont reporting a first quarter profit that beat analyst estimates. European and Asian stocks are rising this morning, along with U.S. stock index futures, but sentiment lifted as more economies move toward easing their coronavirus lockdowns, oil gaining for a fifth day. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 26 points, Dow futures up 225, and NASDAQ futures up 85. The DAX in Germany's up 1.5%. 10-year Treasury down 11/30 seconds, yield 0.66%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up 10%, up $2.08 at $22.47 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.5%, or $7.90 at $17.0550 an ounce. The euro 1.0854 against the dollar. British pound 1.2456. And the yen is at 106.78. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, we're seeing states across the country opening up. It comes as New York, the state with the most coronavirus cases, is laying out plans of its own. Bloomberg's John Tucker in New York joins us live with the very latest.
And Michael, New York is planning to reopen as the number of hospitalizations and new cases continue to decline. Regions that meet a long list of requirements can start opening beginning May 15th. Construction, manufacturing, and select retail businesses will be part of the first phase of reopenings, with schools and entertainment last. New Jersey schools, public and private, will remain closed through the academic year's end in June, and California will start loosening its lockdown on Friday. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, John. There is another threat from the lung virus that causes COVID-19. It may cause swift and sometimes fatal damage, blood clots. If dangerous clots go untreated, they may manifest for days to months after respiratory symptoms have resolved. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. It is 6:19 on Wall Street and live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. How does an entertainment giant hold up when entertainment is shut down? We get a really good idea of that after the close of regular trading today when the Walt Disney Company reports second quarter earnings. And here with a preview now, Paul Sweeney, host of Bloomberg Surveillance and Bloomberg Markets here on Bloomberg Radio. Nice as always to talk with you, Paul. And of course, before coronavirus became the story, the big story around Disney was its size and what an asset it was. And now I guess the question is the scale of Disney a liability now?
Yeah, it's interesting. Disney's really being hit across most of its major business lines. Let's just start with the parks and resorts. Most of their theme parks around the world are absolutely been closed for several months now, although we're getting some news that they may open up their Shanghai park later this month in China. But, you think about Disney World in Orlando, Disneyland in Los Angeles, and all the other parks around the world closed. And it's just an extraordinary hit to their P&L. So that's a big, big issue. Of course, they have cruise ships as well. Those have been halted as well. So that the whole parks and resorts, which is about 1/3 of the profitability of the company, has been shut down for several months. And, the question is going forward, when will they open? How will they open? And will people actually come back to the parks? That's one issue. Mm-hmm. The second issue is their filmed entertainment business. I mean, they own 40% of the global box office for movies. And, of course, movie theaters have been shut for several months around the world, and that's going to impact their business. They've had to delay the release of several films. And the question is, will people come back to theaters going forward? And that's a big question. And then the third big business for them is their media networks. You think about their broadcast networks like ABC and, of course, their cable networks led by ESPN. There's been no sports. So it's just been a real challenge for them. We'll see that this quarter. And the question is, what will be the impact for the upcoming quarters?
And so much of the answer to that question, I have to imagine, is going to be driven by government's reopening, isn't it? And how Disney sort of aligns itself with the plans that, particularly Florida and California are going to be putting forward here.
That's absolutely the case, and so they're really at they really have to work with the local governments, in the United States as well as around the world here. So they're going to have to work with the governments in terms of reopening the economy and getting some of their properties back online here. So like a lot of other companies we've seen, Nathan, they've been trying to really shore up their liquidity, drawing down on some revolving credit lines and some debt facilities to make sure they have enough cash to kind of weather the storm. Now, the good news about Walt Disney Company is they are an extremely healthy company from a financial perspective. They have a great balance sheet, and they, of course, their brand is arguably one of the best brands in the world. And the expectation is, whenever we get to the other side of this, that brand will generate value as it has, really over the last 50 years.
The health of the balance sheet notwithstanding, is cost cutting going to have to be something that Disney addresses to get out from the other side of this?
Yeah, it is, and they've really already started that. And you think about their parks and resorts business, they've furloughed over 100,000 of their parks employees already because, again, the parks are closed. A lot of the executives have taken significant pay cuts, 50% pay cuts on average. So they're trying to conserve cash and in the near term to weather the storm, and expecting that when we do get to the other side of this, that they will try to ramp up as quickly as possible, like a lot of other companies.
About 30 seconds left here, Paul. After Netflix's blockbuster earnings, you have to think that, aside from everything else, Disney Plus could be a bright spot, yeah?
Yeah, Disney Plus is really the streaming features of the Walt Disney Company, really the future of the company, if you really think about it. And they already signed up 50 million subscribers in the first 3 months, so really, really successful. And the expectation is that will continue to be a bright spot. But again, that's not going to be a moneymaker for several years for the company.
All right, Paul Sweeney, host of Bloomberg Markets and Bloomberg Surveillance here on Bloomberg Radio. Looking forward to chatting with you more later on this morning here on Bloomberg Radio. Just taking a look at Disney in the pre-market. Shares are higher by 2/3% ahead of that earnings report for the second quarter due out after the close of regular trading on Wall Street. Ahead of the open, futures moving higher. S&P futures up 23 points right now. Dow futures a gain of 203 points, and NASDAQ futures higher by 78 points. The 10-year Treasury down 11/32, yield 0.66%. Yield on a 2-year note 0.18%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The early market indicators are pointing to a move higher at the open on this Tuesday as more economies move toward easing coronavirus-related lockdowns. And crude oil continues to climb. It's back above $22 a barrel. Today we get an update on the services part of the U.S. economy, which makes up the bulk of economic activity. The April report is expected to show a significant downturn amid coronavirus-related shutdowns. And the March report on the trade balance is also out today, along with earnings from several companies, including Aramark and Disney. Gold's Gym has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy amid the coronavirus